This story is concerning wildlife. It's concerning a rhino.
A rhino?
Right? Yeah,
okay.
rhino. I used to live in Kenya when I was about 5 or 6 years old.
Okay.
And we were in this wildlife park in a grey Morris Minor. This rhino started chasing us. There's me and my sister in the back seat.
Right.
It was like something out of Jurassic Park.
Yeah.
We were turning around saying, "Believe it, Dad. Just put your foot down, Dad. We're in a field. Put your foot down." This rhino was chasing us.
One from Mark here in Derby. Went on holiday for our first romantic holiday to Tunisia years ago. Decided to take my girl into a petting zoo. I got a bag of food to feed the animals. A giant goat then went for me, putting its front legs over my shoulders and proceeding to headbutt me over a fence into one of the pens, covering me in the food and making my nose bleed. I got out of the pen, then the goat and all his mates attacked me again, sending me running and screaming like a girl out of the zoo, with my girlfriend rolling with laughter on the floor.
A tarantula climbed up the bottom of the bed on the sheet.
Yeah.
And it walked all the way up. It's eyeball to eyeball.
Wow.
And I thought to myself, what am I going to do when it climbs over my face? But then a miracle happened. It raised its 2 front legs and waved them around. And then it turned around and walked down the side of the sheet.
Boris Johnson been attacked by an ostrich. The former PM was enjoying a safari trip with his family when the bird leaned into his car and went oi oi and pecked his hand. In footage shared online, he quickly jerked from the ostrich, don't dirty minds away from the ostrich, and shouted, "Oh, Christ, get hell," before driving off. And so I just set it out there. Have you been attacked by an animal? When I was about 7, says Trevor Jenkins, on holiday in Spain in the 70s, a monkey pulled my long hair. It was long because it was the 70s. I was in floods of tears. And as the family car drove out the car park, an elephant ripped off the car mirror. We got the message. Spanish animals aren't to be trusted. Jeremy, Brittany here from the United States. I was spurred by a rooster in my right foot a few years ago. Spurred? How do you get spurred by a rooster?
And one here from Dan in Hampshire. Morning, Mike. Is an Aussie that has been dive bombed by our version of the Magpie, which is
across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Good morning and welcome to Morning Glory, 3 minutes past 6. It is Tuesday, the 8th of July, and here we are. We're into the second part of Wimbledon week. Wimbledon fortnight, I should say. And we're still going to complain about the AI scenario. We're still going to complain about the line judges because, quite frankly, I haven't had my say on all of that. We'll come back to that in a moment. Peter Blexley's here this morning. Very good morning to you, Peter.
Morning.
We've got plenty to talk about. There's all sorts of stories on the front pages. We have, mon Dieu, we're about to have a state visit by Prime Minister Emmanuel Macron and Mrs. Macron. They'll be coming here and they'll be shown the bright lights of the city. They'll be shown all around some kind of NATO exercise where there's British troops, there's French troops. They'll have a conversation, he and Keir Starmer, about how they can stop the boats. Arrête, I think is the word you're looking for. And of course, we'll be asking them, will we not, as the Daily Mail says, would you mind telling us what you did with our 731 million quid, monsieur? Or possibly not. I don't know why he's here. I don't know why they're bothering. I don't know how much it's going to cost. There's going to be some kind of state banquet which involves members of the royal family as well. But to be honest, I mean, everybody knows what's going to end up happening. Nothing is going to end up happening. The migrants will continue to flood across the English Channel, or the Sleeve, as they prefer to call it in France, and they will continue to come here, where they'll be put up in very nice hotels until we can find them a very nice house in which they can live and bring members of their family in for the rest of time. All costing us a pretty penny. I spoke to somebody last night who said that she was about to set up a business in the Middle East, and unfortunately for her, the people who were going to invest in it, the company in Britain, of course, have all decided to pull out because of the wealth tax looming that the British government says they're going to put on wealthy people in this country. So it's all still going down the gurgler, ladies and gentlemen. Have no fear. Just in case you wanted to know how to join the Home of Common Sense, how to articulate your fears, your woes and your frustrations, here's how you do it.
Morning, Mike. Andy from Birmingham.
Hi, Mike. Mark from Manchester.
Good morning, Mike. It's Judy from, excuse me, Altos, West Yorkshire.
Morning, Mike. It's Paula in Liverpool. I feel as though I ring about this every single week.
Hello, Mike. It's Michael from the Dustbin of the World, Norwich.
Morning, Mike and the team.
Ben from Essex, up at 5, driving into London to complete my day's work.
Great show and really enjoyed the summary of this useless government.
Good morning, Mike. Phil from Nottingham. One of these working people. I got up at 5. I've done my ironing. I've cleaned the kitchen. I've emptied the dishwasher. All the usual guff. Made sandwiches. And now I'm walking the dog.
Yep, and that's what most people do in the morning, and then they go to work. Apart from those, of course, who don't bother going to work because they're being supported by you and I and the state mechanism. No borders between us, apparently, according to King Charles. No borders at all. Well, it's easy for him to say. You know, he's the king. He doesn't have to worry about people moving into his street because he doesn't have a street. He has a castle. He doesn't have to worry about people rather sort of queuing around the corner to get free stuff, because there is no corner. He lives in a castle. We'll get back to more of that. This is Morning Glory, of course. It's the home of common sense. It's the world headquarters of free speech. Let's get it on. I'm exhausted already. Peter, very good morning to you.
Good morning, Governor.
Isn't it nice to be in the throes of summer?
It really is.
You know, it's lovely. The sun's shining, you know, the boats are coming across thick and fast, you know, you have to queue up for everything, and just when you thought you'd made a couple of £100, turns out you've got to give about 300 quid to the government in tax.
2,599 of them arrived last week in those small boats in 7 days last week. I mean, utterly astonishing. But of course,
it's like what was that holiday company they used to have in the you know, it's like the 1830 club, isn't it?
Yeah.
You know, they're just all coming over. They're all about 20, 21, having a great time, smiling, waving at the cameras. You know, welcome to Britain.
On the numerous 1830s holidays that I went on, in the opposite direction as we flew out, I have to admit we took elements of our culture to far-flung sunny countries.
I can see that.
Which were not always welcomed by the locals.
Yeah, but you weren't staying there for the rest of the time. You only go for a couple of weeks, right?
2 weeks of absolute debauchery and
mayhem.
Fun.
Yes.
And I loved them.
Do you remember the adverts, which are now no longer allowed?
Yeah.
You know, wake up at the crack of dawn and all that stuff. Amazing. Amazing. Anyway, the less said about that, the better. But what's going on with the king, right? The king is going to tell Emmanuel Macron there are no borders between England and France. I mean, I'm sorry, that's not really the right message, is it?
Good morning, Your Majesty. Should you be having a cup of tea out of a bit of bone china, as me and Mike are speaking?
Yes.
It's very easy to speak such words when you live in castles, palaces and estates like Sandringham.
Indeed.
It's not quite so easy if you live in suburban London, like I do, or like many listeners and viewers do, throughout the country, every corner of the land, who are witnessing the demise of this great nation.
And what could be easily described as an invasion, quite frankly.
Yes.
You know? It's unbelievable. So apparently it's going to be a state banquet tonight, which Emmanuel Macron is going to be appearing, and it's going to be at Windsor Castle. The King will say the continued partnership between the UK and France remains vital as our two countries face a multitude of complex threats emanating from multiple directions. No, they're not emanating from multiple directions. They're emanating from one bleeding direction, and that's over there, which is where all these characters are coming from.
But, you know, there's another very serious point to all of this, apart from the boats. The boats is the visible, kind of very raw element of illegal migration that we are all so familiar with. But the bigger problem is the other migration, which is, of course, you know, the Boris wave, for example, 2 million people in a year, something like that. All that kind of ridiculousness. And those people that have come in, whether it be student visas and they don't go back, other ways and they don't go back.
Work visas, they don't go back.
And they don't go back. And those who have been granted the right to live in this country and have brought all their dependents with them. Right? It is as much about the granddads from Ghana and the nanas from Nigeria who have come here and do not contribute, and many other people who have come in under dependence clauses, as I call them. So many who have come in from Africa and elsewhere with their disabled children, cuts across a lot of what we're going to speak about this morning, whose children have considerable needs, and they are privy to it all. They get it all. And so somebody else gets pushed down the ladder. And every time I speak about children with disabilities on air, people get in touch and say, Peter, I've got a child with disabilities. Thank you for highlighting this.
Yeah.
It is so difficult for those people to get what they rightfully should have, and so often it is because they've been pushed down the ladder because other people have come into this country and leapfrogged them.
And somehow got priority. And that's the bit that's starting to really, pee people off, because the point about what people talk about now is fairness. I mean, Starmer, the idiot, put out a tweet of the weekend with one of his, famous, musically accompanied videos where he talked about, creating fairness for people in Britain. And the one place that is not fair right now is Britain, because people feel exactly what you say, that they're getting leapfrogged over, they're working their guts out, they're paying their taxes, and yet they can't access the services they need because other people are going ahead of them.
I am so glad that you've brought music into the conversation this morning, because page 1 of the Times talks about the headline, the Prime Minister set to press Macron for a one-in, one-out deal.
Ugh.
Well, the ludicrousness of this, I would like to highlight now in a little musical ditty for you,
then.
which I've come up with.
Go on.
And it goes like this.
Yeah.
3, 2, 1. You take an immigrant in, you throw an immigrant out, in, out, you boat them all about, you do the Starmer Cokey and you turn about. Oh, that's what it's all about. Whoa! I've written other verses, but I think people have probably had enough.
I mean, we completely destroyed this policy about a week ago when they came up with it. One in, one out. Hello, I know these are, Rachel Reeves and her calculator working hard again. One in, one out doesn't reduce the number of people in the country.
Correct.
I'm afraid it leaves the number of people in the country the same. So also apparently the EU doesn't fancy it, so it's going to be chucked out anyway. I suspect that this is the Times, who are rather friendly to this government, sort of doing the bidding of the government, saying, "Oh, Keir Starmer is going to urge President Macron to keep this one in, one out business. It's not going to go anywhere. It's a complete waste of time. It's a bit of a non-story, to be honest."
But we know that anybody on the left of the politics debate is absolutely terrified about telling the truth about migration, illegal immigration, whatever it may be, because they fear they will be branded racist.
Of course.
They are absolutely terrified of it. It is why they will not get a grip. The previous government were terrified of talking about it because they thought they'd be branded racist.
Right.
It's utter nonsense. Let's talk facts like you and I have done this morning. Let's talk facts. Let's get some solutions. Let's stop this ludicrous situation from going on and on and on.
And can we please stop pretending that, diversity is our strength, and that, all these people come into the country from points unknown who are at the very least criminals and at the very worst terrorists, right?
Yep.
Many of them, and it could be that some of them are not, but even the ones who are not either of those two things are probably going to be working illegally, delivering food to people on bikes that they shouldn't be driving around on, right? With absolutely no insurance and no way of paying taxes to the country. So can we please just remember that this is not something that we think is a good thing, and it's actually a bad thing. Chris Philp, who suddenly discovered a backbone now that he's in the shadow government, he had a conversation with Angela Eagle yesterday, which I haven't seen yet, about asylum hotels. Let's have a look.
Well, I would just gently remind the Minister the number of immigrants in asylum hotels has actually gone up since the general election. Now, I recently visited an asylum hotel and saw bikes from Deliveroo, Just Eat and Uber Eats in the hotel compound. Local eyewitnesses confirmed that the illegal immigrants in the hotel had been illegally working. This creates a pull factor because people smugglers actively market illegal working opportunities, and of course it creates risk for women and girls who might receive deliveries late at night from these undocumented illegal immigrants. So will she at least commit now to preventing this illegal working taking place from the hotels that she runs?
Mr. Speaker, we've had a 50% increase in raids and arrests on illegal working since we came into government, so perhaps he should have spent more time when he was in government in enforcing the rules on illegal working, and we are doing more, including extending the law against illegal working to the gig economy, which is in the Border Security Bill, which he voted against.
They're just making such a horlicks of it, all of them, aren't they? They don't know what they're doing.
Let me scratch this surface which is just about all that current border force, immigration force, police, customs are doing about it. That's all it is. It's scratching the surface. And to really sum it up, let's just hop over the channel to last week, where that £771 million that we've sent to France bought a Stanley knife. The most expensive Stanley knife in the history of mankind. Don't worry, if you go to Screwfix or any other retailer, they will not charge you £771 million for a Stanley knife this morning. That was it when they punctured one boat. And of course, just to repeat, 2,599 came in last week on all the other boats that successfully made that journey.
I've got a better number for you. This is in the Daily Mail, who've actually pointed out that 771 million cost that we've given to the French. And I sometimes wonder to myself, in any job that you've ever done or I've ever done, you know, there comes a time when you ask the question, don't you? Sorry, can I just ask you, Mr. Peter Blexley, what have you done with the 771 million that we gave you? And unless you come up with a decent answer, we might arrest you, or we might charge you, or we might bring you some kind of, you know, horrible thing down on your head. You know, but we seem to just go, oh, OK then. What have they done with it? What have they spent it on? Do you know what the number is of people who have come here on small boats since 2018? 172,255. And that's the people we know about, right? So round that up easy to 250,000 people, and that's about what's been going on.
An absolute scandal and stain upon this nation. But please remember, that number is dwarfed by all the visa fiddling, all the dependents that people have brought in by exploiting other ways of entering this country. We are awash with people that should not be here.
Exactly.
Absolutely should not.
And the country is literally straining at its edges because there's just too many people here. And there's nothing that anybody seems to be doing about it. We're not deporting anyone. The last time we deported anyone was about last November. And, you know, the government bangs on about, oh, we've deported 30,000 people, 24,000 of whom wanted to go anyway. You know, we are not deporting these maniacs who are coming here to do God knows what, and to rip us off and to live and scrounge on the British pound. Thank you very much indeed. The taxpayers are just going, just keep taking my money. You know, I'm sitting here, I'll probably be sitting here until about 9:30 this morning before I make any money. By the time I've finished paying all the taxes that I get charged, you know? It's ridiculous. It's absolutely bloody ridiculous. I'm sick of it.
And not so long ago, Mike, you and I were sitting in this very studio talking about that story that said at Manston, where they get processed through because of a lack of staff, they're not actually doing the checks that they should do. And they're just ushering them straight onto coaches. We don't know their background. We don't know their motives. We don't know who they are. And yet they are pouring into this country.
And only yesterday we commemorated the terrible, terrible day 20 years ago, 7/7, a horrible, ghastly terrorist attack perpetrated by people who didn't come here from another land, but whose parents came here from another land and who somehow hated this country so much that they thought they'd blow themselves up and take 50-odd people with them.
Rest all the souls that were lost that day. And, of course, so many people that carry the scars and the life-changing injuries to this very day, some of whom we heard their testimonies yesterday. A ghastly, ghastly act. And let's not forget, 2 weeks later, another bunch tried to do exactly the same thing.
And it was only good fortune that saved probably another 52 people from losing their lives.
Their lack of expertise in bomb making. Their bombs weren't good enough.
Did you not find it, though, slightly disingenuous, I'm afraid? And I don't just blame the King for this, but the whole kind of, you know, the tenor of the conversation around what happened yesterday when it was commemorated as a terrible event, you know, that we all had to talk about the strength of our community, and we had to talk about how brilliant we were at being, you know, resolute, and how fantastic we were at not being divided by people who would divide us, as if it's the fault of other people who've divided us other than the people that blew the bleeding bombs up.
Well, what I'm going to talk about is my opinion. It's very unpalatable. I don't want it. I don't encourage it. But let's just look at the landscape of this country and how it's changed. The last horrendous year for murderous terrorist attack really was 2017. And there, of course, was a number. London Bridge, Manchester and the such like. The landscape of Britain has changed even since 2017. The political landscape has changed dramatically. The conversations where people are allowed to have them are very, very different. I have a huge fear that when we get the next mass casualty, Islamic kind of terrorist event, there may be dreadful trouble on the streets of Britain.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think you're absolutely right, because people have reached the end of their tether about all sorts of things, and being told that there's nothing wrong is not helping. Being told that they should be unable to be divided is not the right way to go. And the King, I'm afraid, is complicit in all of this, in the same way that he's telling us that there are no borders between here and France. Well, there bloody well should be. And you're the King of the United Kingdom of Great Britain and Northern Ireland, not the world, and you should be defending Britain, as opposed to welcoming everybody, any Johnny-come-lately who wants to walk into the country and take advantage of it.
But he is, of course, the ultimate ivory tower dweller,
yeah,
isn't
of course, he is.
So he will believe what he's told, and whilst, of course, he travels the country widely, he only goes to places that have just had a new lick of paint.
Yeah.
Because everywhere gets spruced up before he arrives.
And he only goes to the toilets where nobody else has ever been.
Yeah. So the likelihood of him ever getting a tube to Tower Hamlets and walking down the streets and seeing the division that exists, not only there but in many other places, the places where we have societies which are completely and utterly separate and haven't integrated, and it's not harmony, and diversity isn't our strength. The likelihood of him experiencing that firsthand is nil, I would suggest.
I would suggest so too. Phil in Coventry says, morning Mike and Peter, I love the Queen, but King Charlie is an idiot. He is so out of touch. All of our kings and queens who fought for their country to make it great will be turning in their graves. Frank in Bromley, Mike, 1 in, 1 out doesn't mean no increase. It means one comes in and is then replaced by another one, so an increase of 1 each time. Well, technically speaking, that's not true, but I see what you're saying. And then finally, Graham in Sunderland, brilliant ditty by Peter. Obviously, Rachel from Accounts has had a big hand in working out the Starmer Cokie. Great show as always. Yeah, fantastic start to the show. Peter Blexley's here. It's 22 minutes past 6. We've got plenty more to talk about, including holiday travel chaos looming for you if you're going anywhere this summer, because nobody knows what you can take with you on the plane. This is Talk.
The whole scheme needs to be scrapped. I'm sorry, it is so rotten to the core that the whole thing needs to be completely dismantled, and we can perhaps start again with a scheme for a very, very, very small number of the most needy, because that's what a civilised society does. And I'm talking a tiny fraction of the current claimants. It is a complete and utter scandal, this.
the UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back to Morning Glory, 6:25. I'm Mike Graham. This, of course, is the home of common sense. Peter Blexley's here. One here from Chris, who says, I like you and Peter talking straight. This king is so woke, you can see why the great Queen never let him take control. She hung on as long as she could. He is disgrace to the people of this country. I just think he's a bit sort of wrong-headed about some things. Let's have a voice note from Shane.
Hi, I'm Mike Shane here. Great show as always. Listen to you every morning. Regarding the immigrants, I heard on the news yesterday that the government is going to set £60 million aside out of our taxpayers' money for them to fight deportation when they get here. Well, I thought the government was going to smash the gangs and stop the immigrants, and now they want to pay for their legal representation so they can fight deportation. What's going on, mate? I mean, if I went to Iraq and broke into Iraq, I'll be shot or I'll be jailed and accused of trespassing. I wouldn't see the light of day for 10 years. What the hell is going on here? Anyway, mate, have a great day. Catch you soon. Bye-bye.
Shane, very good point, very good point. And nobody understands the legal aid system, Peter. I don't know if you can explain it, but I mean, it seems as though anyone can get their hands on legal aid as long as they're not from here. Why are we giving legal aid to foreigners?
And there's a vast industry of immigration lawyers. Oh. So many of them. And look at Starmer and his background, and Hermer, the Attorney General, his chum, and their backgrounds in defending the indefensible. People who shouldn't have been here. Absolute vermin that they've stood up and defended to stay in this country. Right. They're, you know, and now, of course, they go into politics and look at the state of it. Yet again, you see, the left and immigration. They've got a huge, huge problem with it. They're not courageous enough to talk honestly about it and to tackle it in the manner that it needs to be tackled, because they don't want to be branded racist by the far left, who, of course, now have got an even firmer grip on this government.
Yeah, because Starmer's lost his bottle.
Because of his caving in,
He's already caved into them, So he can't now talk about people who are scroungers on benefits who shouldn't be, because everybody who gets benefits now is absolutely in the clear. And they've obviously got to deserve what they get, because none of them are scrounging. Not one of them is faking it. No, of course not. That would be wrong.
The increase in numbers of those claiming disability
thousands a day. Thousands a day.
Absolutely astonishing. Compared from just a few years ago. There's a bandwagon and people are jumping on it. I do not want to deny anybody with a genuine disability anything. I want them to have a life of comfort. I want them to be able to work if they can.
That's what it's for.
I want them to have that mobility car. I want them to have all the adaptations to their house. I want them to have whatever they need. The genuine, have my absolute empathy, sympathy, call it what you will, unshakably. But those who want to take the mickey, those who claim that they've got something in their bonds which stops them going to work, when actually they might just have had a bifter last night and they're bone idle and demotivated and want to bang on about their anxiety. I want those people visited unannounced by people from the benefits agency. I want them properly interviewed, tested, and let's see if they are genuine or not. I want the genuine to get what they need.
Exactly right.
I want the fakers to be thrown off the system.
They certainly are fakers. Absolute loads of them. Fakers. Stop being fakers. Air Miles Andy cleared for takeoff, it says on the front page of The Sun. Apparently Prince Andrew can end his self-imposed travel ban and return to being Air Miles Andy. The FBI have closed their investigation into his links with Jeffrey Epstein. Let's have a look at what Caroline Levitt had to say on the Epstein files last night.
Is committed to truth and to transparency. That's why the Attorney General and the FBI Director pledged at the President's direction to do an exhaustive review of all of the files related to Jeffrey Epstein's crimes and his death. And they put out a memo in conclusion of that review. There was material they did not release because, frankly, it was incredibly graphic and it contained child pornography, which is not something that's appropriate for public consumption. But they committed to an exhaustive investigation. That's what they did, and they provided the results of that. That's true.
So basically, the FBI investigation, certainly the part of it that involves Andrew, is over, shut down. I think we've also got a little bit of footage that has come in overnight of Epstein's prison cell. I don't know if you've seen this before, Peter, but I'd welcome your expertise on what we're going to see. I don't know what we actually are going to see because I've not seen it yet, but let's have a look. This is presumably his final... Is this him in his cell? It's outside his cell, yeah. This is where he was supposed to have taken his own life, right? And he was not meant to. He was meant to have been under surveillance, but he certainly doesn't seem to have been under surveillance. There's not a lot going on there, is there? A guard appeared at 10:19 to go in the direction of Epstein's cell, and then disappear. Because of course the accusation is that they were supposed to be watching him, and then they end up not watching him.
Well, the first clip is 7:49. Yeah. And then it fast forwards to 10:39. Yeah. That is most definitely not a suicide watch routine.
No, it's not, is it?
Suicide watch routine is every 30 minutes. Yeah. Like at least. Yeah. You know, it should be a shorter time frame than that. In fact, some suicide watch officers quite literally have the door open and sit there in a chair watching them all the time.
Right.
It is,
because he wasn't a dangerous prisoner, was he? He wasn't likely to escape or anything.
It is, of course, a matter of considerable sadness for me whenever I hear that an odious prisoner like him has been able to take their life because they escaped justice. Yes. We've had some notable ones over here in the past. Harold Shipman, Fred West, people like that who've been able to string themselves up and escape their punishment. And that is always deeply, deeply disheartening for me because I want those people, those monsters, to serve decade after decade after decade after decade in their lives of misery.
Thinking about it.
Yeah, because it is a punishment. Yeah. They managed to swerve justice, same as Epstein did. And of course, it forever leaves questions. What was... And bearing in mind, he had a private jet and used to fly people to that island, and I don't recall having heard very much about that whatsoever.
No. And not one of those people who spent time on that island has ever been questioned, never mind charged. And I include Andrew in that.
Exactly.
You know? And we know that certainly he has questions to answer because he was consorting, at the very least, with this guy, knowing after the fact that he was a paedophile.
Yep. The disappointing thing from Caroline Levitt, the press spokesperson at the White House, is that she used the expression child pornography. There is no such thing as child pornography. Children do not make pornography. They are abused. There are child sexual abuse images. That's what it is. That's what it should be called. Words are important.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree with that. But according to the Sun's front page this morning, it is a bombshell. He is punkered down at Royal Lodge in Windsor for 6 years, fearing arrest if he left the UK. He's only been abroad once, apparently, since the scandal erupted. And he's so pompous, Prince Andrew. Presumably he'll see this as some kind of victory. And next thing you'll see him playing golf in Abu Dhabi or something.
Well, I will quickly turn the page should I ever come across a newspaper with such an image in it. His day is done. His race is run. He should just quietly fade away.
Shuffle off.
He'll still live a life of privilege compared to everything compared to our lives and compared to the lives of everybody listening and watching. He's never going to be skint, is he? But I think there's been so much about him in recent years. I would think he's probably a character that I would very much not like to meet. In fact, an old mate of mine was on the same ship coming back from the Falklands as Prince Andrew, and he tells tales from all those decades ago that, shall we say, are less than complimentary.
Yes, I've never heard of a complimentary story about him, actually. I mean, although there are those who say that he was quite a good trade envoy for Britain when he used to turn up at various places because people were impressed they had a member of the royal family in the room. But, I mean, I've never heard a good story about him as an individual being a fine and upstanding person. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Pretty objectionable. Let's talk about the alert test. You remember this thing that went off, I think it was the year before last, the last time we heard it. There it is, there's the noise. And apparently they're going to do another one on the 7th of September. So stand by your beds, because that's the date that you should put down in your diary. When you hear it, you don't run out of the room and throw yourself in the river or anything. Here's Pat McFadden from the government talking about it.
So we tell the public well in advance that the test is coming, so everyone knows the date and the time, And when it comes to vulnerable groups, for example, potential victims of domestic violence, we have specific communication with charities in that field, and there is advice on the government alert website for people to opt out of the test if they want to. We don't want people to opt out, but we understand there might be circumstances where the people are particularly vulnerable where they'll choose to do so.
Do they not know that the state of this country would suggest that there's no point in having an alert for anything? You know, how about an alert for the government's bleeding useless? You know, just play it every day. What's he talking about? Why are we having an alert? For what?
They are such bad...
What are they doing?
This government
what are they doing?
is full of appalling communicators, isn't it?
Pat McFadden. I mean, you wouldn't cross the road to get 10 quid off him, would you?
No, he's not somebody that would interest me in the slightest. But, you know, words are important.
Yeah.
You're a broadcaster. I do my bit in the media. It's so important that your words have clarity.
And meaning.
That they have meaning and purpose.
Right.
And can be understood by anybody who's listening to you.
Right.
That was just a pile of mumbo-jumbo.
I mean, that's why I played it. Not because it's in any way newsworthy, but because it's kind of pointless.
Yeah.
It's like in the midst of everything that's going on, you know, the pound crumbling, you know, our trade deficits all over the place. You know, we've got an economy which is going down the gurgler faster than you can say Rachel Thieves. You know, you've got a Prime Minister who doesn't even have power over his own party to pass rules and laws that he wants to pass. He's about to be completely, I don't want to say the word because it's too rude, jumped, shall we say, by Emmanuel Macron, who's going to take advantage of him because he's about as good a negotiator as a baby, right?
Yeah.
There's nothing going well in this country. Nothing's going right. We've got a massive migration problem. We've got, you know, people just breaking into the country. We've got a crime problem, which we're going to talk about in a minute. We've got our prisons are full, and they're also overrun by criminals, not run by the, you know. And he's talking about an alert on the 7th of September, but it's only a test, and you can opt out of it if you want. But we'd rather you didn't. What's the point?
And Pat McFadden's answer to all of the aforementioned is waffle.
Yeah.
You see, these are people who are not across their brief.
You're better off with Postman Pat.
Yeah, they're not across their brief. They do not thoroughly grip what it is they're talking about. And clearly, they do not have the courage of their own convictions because they're really not in touch with what they're supposed to be saying.
No.
Consequently, you get that.
I know.
Twaddle.
Absolutely ridiculous. And Joanna from Salisbury says, Mike, on the migrant boats, Labour have finally got it sussed. They've invited Mrs Macron over and they're going to stand her on the beach, prepared to be slapped. She may well do that. One from David in Worcestershire. With Macron arriving, it's time to ask exactly what we got for giving our fishing rights away to mainly the French. For what? Well, that's a good point, isn't it? Because the last time we had a conversation with the French about anything, we ended up giving them a load more fishing rights and getting nothing in return except giving them another few £100 million and come and fish all our fish out of the water.
And we heard they were very intransigent when it came to those fishing rights. The French were not going to budge. This was their demand. We had to meet it, or there would be no give and take on any other matters. So the French got what they wanted. We got 2,599 people on small boats last week.
I know, and they don't even speak French either, and they're not French, by the way. It's 6:38. Let's get a voice note from Anton.
Morning, Mike. Morning, Peter. I just was reflecting on yesterday, and I find it, I don't know, shocking really that all of our leaders seemed to get through yesterday, and even Nigel Farage managed to do it without mentioning Islamic extremism. They kept talking about extremism, and they kept talking about, you know, everyone coming together, and I understand the message they're trying to get across, and we shouldn't have division in the country, but they don't seem to factor in the great unknown quantity of people in the country who absolutely hate us. And obviously I'm not talking about every Muslim, but I am talking about an unknown massive quantity of Islamists, and this seems to get ignored. It frustrates the hell out of me. Thank you.
Yeah, I just hate the idea that people just don't say what they mean and they hide from the truth. What's the point of that? Why can't we just be honest about what's been going on?
If any scantily dressed young women who perhaps might wear the attire that they would wear if they were going out on a Friday or Saturday night in Newcastle, for example, were, as a collective, as a group, to walk down a street in Tower Hamlets, should I say, or many other places around this country, and please don't, should any of you be listening, you would then see just how divided this nation is, just how there has been a rampant, chronic lack of integration. We have divided communities in our midst that do not want to integrate in any way, shape or form. Certain members of those communities, as we all know, detest us, detest what we stand for, detest our freedoms.
Right. And want to change the society in which they live, right?
Indeed. So that's where it's at. But of course, yesterday, all those leaders, as Anton so brilliantly pointed out, were using language which skirts around the issue, which dodges the obvious, and that was, of course, the fact that 7/7 was created through Islamic terrorism, through people who want to kill us all.
Absolutely apropos of nothing at all. I've fallen upon a tweet from Matt Vickers, who was on my show yesterday, and actually he's an exception. He says, today is 20 years since 7/7, when Islamic terrorists killed 52 people and injured over 700. So I'm going to retweet that, because at least he has said the word.
Yeah, but of course Mr Vickers is not a leader of the nation, of course, and they all came together to make sure that they swerved the obvious. But there you go. They're the people we've got in charge, everybody.
And here's one from John in Western Supermare. He says, King Charles doesn't worry about neighbours, he just buys the next property, as he recently did for Camilla, which is true. He doesn't have to worry about it. He lives in literally an ivory tower. 6:41. Loads more to come, including, what shall we say here, the risk of the holiday chaos. We'll talk more about the automatic line calling at Wimbledon. And also, apparently, there's a tube crisis. You can't get to Wimbledon either. We'll talk about that coming next.
They don't know what the they're doing. Do you understand that?
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back to Morning Glory, 6:43. I'm Mike Graham with you all the way through, of course, until 10 o'clock. Got this from Carolina in Bath. What a great name. Morning, Mike and Peter. She says, since the 4th of July 2024, a dark cloud has hung over this once great land and has remained ever since, and I see no sign of it lifting. Rodney and co, which is what we call Starmer, have created a feeling of foreboding, which is not what a Prime Minister or a government should ever do. Reference to Charlie Boy, he's not my king. I was a monarchist when the Queen was alive. Keep up the great work. Your country needs you and your colleagues at Talk. Carolina, what a great message. Thank you very much indeed. She's right. There is a feeling of foreboding. There is a sense that the streets are not as safe as they were. You know, there is a sense that our prisons have been taken over by gangs, many of them Islamic gangs, right? There is a sense that you can't see a doctor, you can't rely on the National Health Service if you've got something wrong. You know, there's a real sense that nothing works, isn't there?
Because so many things don't
work. Yeah,
they really don't.
I got on a train last Friday to go out to Essex for a party. It left on time. It got out of Liverpool Street Station. The journey was supposed to be 45 minutes. Right, half an hour later, we'd gone about 2 miles. And they said, unfortunately, there's a signal fault, and we're only running trains on 2 lines instead of 4, so we're going to be about half an hour late. And everybody just kind of shrugs their shoulders and goes, oh, well, that's just life, isn't it?
Here we go again.
You know.
Here we go again. You mentioned prisons, Mike. Can we have a look at a story in the Mail today? I think it's the Mail.
Oh, yeah, Mail,
about
page
prisoners.
9.
No, it's the Sun.
No,
I beg your pardon.
Yeah.
Page 21, please forgive me. About prisoners getting high and watching TV. Because it's very apposite to so much of what I do. Let me tell you a story that came my way last week. Okay. It's about somebody who is known to somebody very close to me. They're in prison at the moment, and they've had drugs issues for a number of years. And to their credit, they really knuckled down in prison and got off drugs.
Got off the drugs.
But there are so many drugs in jail, and this person is surrounded by them constantly that they don't think they're going to have the inner strength to be able to stay off them, and they fear they're being drawn back onto them.
This piece on
that's in prison.
I know. In this piece on the page 21 of the Sun, 39% of prisoners say it's easy to get drugs in their jail. 39%.
Yeah, cocaine, steroids, cannabis, but this person I heard somebody spoke to was ketamine. That was another one. It's just our jails are awash with them.
And how are they getting in?
Is going on?
The other thing that people have been telling me, and we've seen a few cases of it, haven't we, of sort of some very spurious activities going on with women prison officers and consorting with male prisoners. But I'm told that there's now a sort of a thing where criminal gangs are having people apply to be prison officers, so that once they get in there, they can facilitate all of these drugs coming in.
Indeed.
So, and they're bypassing presumably all the checks and balances that whoever's recruiting for prison officers should be doing.
Coupled with the amount that's being flown in by drones, and the prison service seems to be largely helpless.
I mean, why can't they just? I mean, call me old-fashioned, but I mean, can't they put a net over the prison yard so that if you do have a drone that flies over, you drop stuff, it doesn't get to the yard?
But they've tried to. But you see, criminals, unfortunately, are very smart and they innovate and they will always find another way. But
when I lived in Scotland, Saughton Prison, which you might know on sort of outskirts of Edinburgh, they used to throw pigeons over the fence because they'd stuff them with dead pigeons, stuff them with drugs, and chuck the dead pigeon over the fence. And the lags would go and pick the pigeon up, take the drugs out. Bob's your uncle.
Indeed.
Shocking.
The whole criminal justice system is in crisis from the very front of it, which is policing, then through to the CPS, understaffed, chronically understaffed, then to the courts, so many of them, leaking roofs, rubbish IT, courts sitting empty, then to the prisons, then to probation. And as a result of all these kind of things, and so much more that you've mentioned this morning, we're becoming a low-trust society. People, including myself, are not trusting the establishment to do their job properly because guess what? They're not doing their job properly. And in low-trust societies, very bad things happen.
That's true. On the same subject, piece in page 9 of the Mail, thousands more thieves and drug addicts will avoid court under plans to ease the crisis in the justice system. Because, again, there's a massive backlog of cases going through the courts. The courts are not opening and dealing with cases as much as they should. There's an awful lot of courts around the land which are just simply not operational. A government review led by former High Court Judge Sir Brian Leveson is going to recommend that out-of-court resolutions are used routinely for low-tier crimes, including theft, drug taking and public order offences. All that's going to do is tell criminals, don't worry, you're never going to go to court. If you commit theft, if you rob people, if you burgle their houses, you'll never end up in court, and you probably then likely will never end up in prison.
Correct. And I hate the language here. Low-tier crimes. You tell anyone who's coming out their front door this morning to go and unchain their bike and cycle to work, and it's not there, you tell them that's low tier because they can't get to work. You tell someone coming out of a tube station this morning who then gets their phone out and then has it snatched. You tell them it's low tier when it's got their bank cards in it, It's got access to everything in it. I was speaking to a fella the other day who had his phone snatched, right? They emptied out his bank accounts because all those details were
and especially if your phone's open at the time they nick it, right?
Yeah. They even nicked his Nectar card points, right, which is a supermarket, loyalty points, right? And he had a free coffee on an app, and they even went and had the free coffee. They cleaned out everything from his phone. And you want to call that low tier? No, it's not. No. You see? And this all started, the rot in policing started many years ago when some clown came up with the idea that we'll screen crimes out. Yes. We'll screen them out. Okay, in other words, we won't do anything about them. We will not investigate them. Now, of course, I know you can't solve every crime because they simply don't have the police officers, but you can be interested, you can be irritated about every crime, and a victim of crime would be quite happy if a police officer turned up and they were irritated about it and they were going to try and do something about it, create an initiative if it was a crime hotspot and all that kind of thing. But we just seem to have this massive disinterest. And of course, you've got all the lefty lunatics that have handed down guidelines from the Sentencing Council, the Parole Board, and all of that. The kind of bodies that will do anything they can to not send someone to prison. Then you get this kind of nonsense, out of court resolutions. Criminals are laughing at the system.
Of course they are.
And in turn, they're laughing at us.
And you don't
the law-abiding, tax-paying grafters.
Exactly. And you don't solve inefficiency by just accepting it and going, well, we can't put everybody through the court system, so let's just not bother. I mean, that's not how you fix it. No. You fix it by fixing it. You know, you get more people, more judges, more prison officers, more, police officers to go to the court system and make it work, for heaven's sake.
We can travel a short mile and a half from here this morning down to Inner London Crown Court, just down the road. I guarantee you, in that building there will be empty courts this morning. Empty courts. And why are they not sitting? Because they can't send anyone to jail because there's no room in the jails. And so it goes on. This rot, the demise of this nation, it's happening. We all know it's happening. And what is anybody trying to do about it?
Just ignore it and pretend that it's not there. That's what they seem to be doing. Let's get a quick voice note from Pete on legal aid.
Morning, Mike. Great show as usual. Pete from Derby. Just wanted to quickly touch on the legal aid that we're now offering to these immigrants that shouldn't be here. Absolutely disgusting. I mean, somebody like myself and many other people that's had to fight for their children but can't get any sort of legal representation, have had to pay for it. You know, there's no help for us there, but hold on, we can now pay, or they want money from the taxpayer to pay for legal representation for illegal immigrants. This whole country is backwards, it's bonkers. I think great show again.
Pete, thanks very much indeed. We're running out of time rapidly. People are saying you should have a longer show. We only do 4 hours. What do you want me to do? 10? 6:53.
Well, Bridget Phillipson was asked a direct question yesterday and refused to give a direct answer. So it seems that the DfE may have moved that on a little bit yesterday. If she just said yesterday, we're not going to take these away from children who've got them, then everyone would know where they stood. You wouldn't have had front pages warning of revolts from Labour MPs again. Maybe that's what's got them worried and rushed out the statement. But it's not really a good way to govern, particularly when we're talking about vulnerable children and their families who often have to battle a lot to get these plans in place.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back to Morning Glory. It's coming up to 6:56, almost 7 o'clock. Peter Blexley's almost going to depart this particular shore to go off and do something else. Don't forget there's a podcast coming out a little bit later on. We should plug your tour, though, Peter, before we do anything else. 2026 is going to be a big year for you. The Makings of a Murderer, The Undercover Detective. You're doing more dates than I've seen any band do in many a year. I mean, forget about Oasis. You know, you're literally killing it. You're going everywhere.
Thank you. Yeah, 105 dates in 2026. Coming to a theatre near you, pretty much wherever you are.
Right.
I solved murders.
Yeah.
As a detective.
Yeah.
I went undercover as a detective, as a murderer. So I pretended to be a murderer.
Right.
And people got caught as a result of that. And then, of course, unfortunately, I was the subject of a murder plot and had to live in witness protection.
Yeah.
So in that regard, this show is unique. It's a true crime show like no other.
And people love true crime, don't they?
Yeah,
it's
plenty of stories from my undercover career and a murder that I'm still working on, not as a police officer, but as a journo, that I've been working on for 20 years. Fascinating case, the murder of Alistair Wilson in Scotland. That's the second part of the show, a truly gripping case. So there's no other true crime show like it. If you'd like to come along and watch, please go to peterblexley.com, have a look at the list of venues, find a theatre that's close to you, and please buy a ticket. It'd be lovely to see you.
Yeah, brilliant, fantastic. Yeah, check it out. I may come along and see one myself.
Thank you.
I'd quite like to do that. Let's talk about Wimbledon, because we're into the second week. I watched a bit of it last night, and some great stuff going on. We've got the final Brit, I think, who's left in it, who some people say, well, he's not really British, is he? He was born in South Africa. This is old Corrie, isn't it?
Yeah, Norrie. Cameron Norrie.
Cameron Norrie, yeah. Born in South Africa, but Scottish dad and Welsh mum, I think. So, I mean, he's as British as anybody else is. He played for Britain. That's going to be good. But I was getting very worked up last week. I went on Saturday for the first time in ages, which was brilliant. Had a great day out. A lot of Pimm's and champagne was taken. And it was a very British event. It felt great. But I'm not keen on these line judges being taken out of action and having this automatic thing. And it turns out it went horribly wrong last Sunday because somebody switched it off. And I can tell that I'm right. You know why? Because bloody Tim Henman has come out defending it. And if Tim Henman's defending it, it must be wrong. He's on the front of the Telegraph saying that anyone who's having a go at it is absolutely and utterly on the wrong place. He's saying the narrative around players questioning the accuracy of the calling is just utter garbage. Well, I'm sorry, Tim, matey. I think you are talking garbage.
One of the last bastions of Britishness, as you point out. Strawberries and cream, champagne if you can afford it, blimey. And world-class tennis.
Exactly.
I did night duty security at Wimbledon a few years ago. And what a venue, what an astonishing place it is.
Shall we take people out to the news with your fantastic version of the hokey cokey? Have a listen.
You take an immigrant in, you throw an immigrant out, in, out, you boat them all about. You do the star McCokey and you turn about. Oh, that's what it's all about. Whoa! I've written other verses, but I think people are probably
exactly right.
How much, ladies and gentlemen, are fish and chips where you come from. We'll go to Jason in Crewe.
Jason from Crewe, fish, chips and peas, £7.50. It's the best chippy in England.
Janice in Leeds, go.
Regarding fish and chips in Leeds, it's between £9.50 and £12.75.
Whitby, how much is fish and chips?
3 of us, fish, chips, peas, I think one of us curry sauce, 3 cans of pop, just short of 70 quid.
£70? That's 23 quid a head, man. Even my maths does that. Very quickly, a voice note. Campbell in Scotland, go.
Up here in Banff in the northeast of Scotland, we can get a fillet and a half of haddock with a regular chips for £8 and 10 pence, and it's by far and away one of the best chippies I've ever had.
Kenneth in Surrey, fish and chips, go.
Fish and chips in Ascot, about half a mile from where you used to live, will cost you £12 and 60 pence. Great show. Keep up the good work.
That's why I moved, because you were living there. When was the last time you had fish and chips?
Couple of weeks ago.
How much? Where'd you get it from?
I think it was about 40 quid. It was in the Ivy.
Honestly, you really are. For any of you who think he's a man of the people, I nearly said you're a...
Keeping it real.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Three minutes past 7. Welcome back to Morning Glory. I'm Mike Graham with you all the way through, of course, until 10 o'clock. We've got some fantastic news for you throughout the course of the morning. We've got some good news, we've got some bad news. We've even got some news that might even make you laugh. The Daily Star has got a story this morning saying there's going to be some kind of hangover pill that you can take, a hangover cure, basically, which means it's like a patch which will alert you to when you've had one too many, or when you're about to have one too many, so that you can recover much quicker the next day. They're calling it the hangover cured. Boffs have come. Boffs? They mean boffins, surely. Oh, there's the alert. Hang on a second. Well, you see, here's the thing. The government are telling us they're going to send the alert signal to us on September the 7th, but they haven't said why. What are you supposed to do when you hear the alert? Are you supposed to run for the hills? Are you supposed to hide under the bed? I don't remember what we were supposed to do the last time. The National Emergency Alert, we'll play Pat McFadden in a little while to tell you exactly why he's doing it. You think we could have an alert for a completely useless government that's out there, because every single thing they do turns to a complete and utter pile of intense, steaming nonsense, I'm afraid. Today, we're going to have the beginning of a state visit from Emmanuel Macron. Nobody knows why he's coming. He presumably is going to cash in his chips for his 771 million quid that we've given him. And according to Keir Starmer, we're going to try and push through his great idea, which is to have a one-in, one-out rule to stop the migrants coming. I've got some bad news for Keir Starmer. One in, one out means one's coming in. You're not actually stopping them. It doesn't work. It's of no use at all. Also, we want to tell you about this. If you've got a story that's affected you or your family and you think we should know about it or investigate it further, please do send us an email at tips@talk.tv. That's tips@talk.tv. You are our eyes and ears on Britain's streets. You might remember last week we got a call from a guy who was a long-distance lorry driver who witnessed a bunch of illegal migrants jumping out the back of a lorry somewhere up near Cambridge. So do tell us what is going on in your world, and we will investigate it and we'll get to the bottom of it. 0344 499 1000 is the number. Prince Andrew also apparently has been cleared by the FBI over the Jeffrey Epstein situation. So I don't know whether that means he's going to be out and about out again. He's suddenly going to appear from his self-imposed hiding away. We shall see. But we want to hear from all of you, of course. You know the number, 0344 499 1000. Also, we're going to talk about whether Labour is going to put a wealth tax on, whether prisoners are actually going to be taught how not to be criminals, whether they're just going to sit in prison getting high on drugs and watching TV. That seems to be all that they're doing. 5 minutes past 7. This is Morning Glory. Let's get it on. See if you can make any sense of this, right? Have a look at Pat McFadden, who is effectively, I would say, the sort of de facto Deputy Prime Minister, certainly a very important member of the Cabinet. Here he is explaining what's going to happen on September the 7th.
So we tell the public well in advance that the test is coming, so everyone knows the date and the time. And when it comes to vulnerable groups, for example, potential victims of domestic violence, we have specific communication with charities in that field, and there is advice on the government alert website for people to opt out of the test if they want to. We don't want people to opt out, but we understand there might be circumstances where the people are particularly vulnerable where they'll choose to do so.
I don't know what he's talking about. We'll ask James Heal in a second if he knows what we're talking about. Nice to see even Wimbledon electronic line calling has become woke, says Stephen, and struggling to make a decision. I'm guessing by the end of the week and the finals, the electronic line calling machines will be claiming benefits due to mental health stress. Absolutely. And Simon on the Isle of Wight says the answer is not to do 10-hour shows, just stop being cheap and keep Peter for 2 hours, says Simon. Well, you know, it's not a question of being cheap, it's just that, you know, Peter's got many things to do. And here's one from Ruth in Fife. Morning, Mike and Peter. Firstly, you're going to need a longer show, loads of rubbish to sort out. Secondly, it's governments that have created division in this country. It's governments that have made all the wrong decisions. It's time to change this system and give more power to the people. Yeah, I don't know how you would do that. Let's talk to James Heal, Deputy Political Editor, of course, at The Spectator. James, very good morning to you.
Morning, Mike.
I don't know what Pat McFadden's on about. Do you? Why are they doing this test on September the 7th, this, you know, emergency test, which, in the midst of all of the nonsense that the government's dealing with, they're bothering with? What are they doing?
Well, I mean, they do this every so often, of course. You know, they did one, I remember, a couple of years ago, and I came and bleeping on my phone.
Yeah.
But, I mean, what was so striking from the interview was the inability to explain why. Now, I think there is a case to say we need an alert system. It's just we're not hearing it. And I find that so patronising from the government when they won't actually tell you why they're doing what they're doing.
Yeah, exactly. And that's the thing. I mean, obviously, I'm being slightly tongue-in-cheek, but, you know, they've got so many issues to deal with. I mean, we're watching this morning that just looking at a handful of news stories, including the migrant crisis, which continues, you know, this conversation that they're going to have with Emmanuel Macron over the next couple of days where, you know as well as I do, nothing much is going to come out of it. There'll be a lot of shaking of hands, and they're going to go and parade around some kind of military base, and it's all going to look terribly nice and friendly. But, you know, the one-in, one-out policy is a complete and utter nonsense. It's never going to work. It's a completely pointless activity, which the EU will probably kibosh anyway. You know, nobody's going to ask Emmanuel Macron to account for the 771 million quid we've already given him, for which we've received the square root of absolutely nothing. You know, nil point on that one. We've got, you know, courts that can't cater for all the criminals that need to go through it. We've got prisons where people are going in and just getting high and watching television. You know, there's nothing good in the world that the Labour government has got going on. And here they are telling us we're going to have some kind of alert on September the 7th, and nobody knows why.
Well, I think that maybe it's to show that one bit of the state still does work. They can still send a message to all our phones and irritate us for 10 seconds on September 7th. Look, I mean, in terms of the visit by Macron, yeah, I mean, this is going to be the Tory attack line, which is that, you know, they looked at this 2.5 years ago. I think Kit Malthouse, who's a Conservative MP, has been proposing this for about 2-3 years now. And, of course, the downside of this is that it could potentially merely reward people who come here illegally and encourage more people to sort of actually come to the north of France and wait and apply for asylum here. And the question is, of course, you know, in terms of, so that allows people in who are sort of the one in. And in terms of the one out, I mean, we have to be very wary about this kind of talk about deportations to France, etc., given, of course, we know how few we've deported against their will, certainly, over the past 18 months.
Right. Well, we haven't really deported any. I mean, the government still occasionally says we've deported 30,000 people, which is a figure that was produced back in November, 24,000 of whom voluntarily went, and many of them probably were actually paid to go. So we haven't really deported more than about probably, I don't know, 5,000, maybe 6,000 people, and even they probably weren't particularly difficult to deport, but we've done nothing since then, and that's more than, 6 months ago.
Yeah, certainly, and of course, if we are unable to return people to France, either against their will or, as I say, deported, the danger is, of course, then, Mike, is that people keep coming here. So what you end up with is a one-in, two-in system, basically, which is that, people keep crossing the channel, and, of course, we keep allowing them to stay here legally. So I think that there's lots of question marks about this scheme. It's going to be announced with much fanfare, with the usual sort of great pageantry, officers of state, etc. Look, we've got to remember this is all about Labour and the Home Office trying to find something acceptable, which is why I think we saw those images of the boat being slashed last week. And of course, then the French came out and said they wouldn't do this for all the boats. It's all about preparing the groundwork so they can say 1 year on, with record levels running at 20,000 already, but they are doing something in office.
Right. I mean, what's the kind of the history of the state visit scenario? Because, I mean, it kind of comes at a time when, it doesn't really need to be a state visit. Macron is not exactly riding high in the polls himself. He's not really particularly a key figure any longer. I mean, I see that at some point or other, the words "the coalition of the willing" is going to come up again, and you think, well, whatever happened to that? Whatever happened to us being on a war footing? Whatever happened to Keir Starmer saying just last month, we're constantly under attack from Russia, and we should be ready for, anything as far as, militarily and cyber-wise and everything else. I mean, it's almost as though, things come in, they go out. He makes a statement one week, he forgets about it the next week. Why on earth a state visit, and why now?
Well, we used to have a state visit. There was an Anglo-French summit typically every year or two, up until the Brexit years, when we sort of suspended that as a sign of increasing tension between the two countries. And one can understand that there is a need for Anglo-French cooperation on a range of different areas, about smuggling, about security, etc. But I do think that on the question of migration, the fundamental issue is the French will never care as much about people leaving their waters as the English will about people arriving here. And that's understandable. We just have less of an incentive to do so. So in terms of, what the government's saying about this state visit, they're emphasising that, migration is just one aspect of it. It's just one of a range of different measures. But the stuff that is going to be uncontroversial, frankly, everyone will shrug their shoulders at. And I'm sure there'll be some important work, but stuff that most people would find unobjectionable about, say, for instance, intelligence sharing. But on the question of one in, one out, I think that this potentially, because even though this is the sort of equivalent, if you will, of Keir Starmer's Rwanda deal, this is what he's saying. We need, instead of a deterrent, this is our own deterrent, effectively. If it fails to live up to expectation, I think people will be asking questions about why they spent so much time invested in it.
Right. But I mean, there's no question now that immigration is the single biggest issue that faces Britain at the moment. Everybody talks about it. The populace wants something done about it. Even voters who 2 years ago would have said, oh, we don't really mind, it's just something that goes on around us. Everybody wants the government to be seen to be doing something about it, but yet they still seem incapable of doing anything about it. We saw a story just yesterday saying we've set aside £60 million for legal aid so that people who have been told that they haven't been successful in their asylum-seeking claim can fight it, and they can appeal, and we can pay them for it, and we can pay lawyers to do it for them. More and more people are coming over the borders. They just seem incapable of doing anything about it, and it's holding them below the waterline, it seems to me.
Well, I think that you touched on it earlier when you said about every week the government seems to be sort of veering from issue to issue. And sometimes we're saying, for instance, China, we want your money, you're very welcome here. The next week we're saying, actually, they're one of our most significant threats. And that kind of lack of a holistic approach is certainly evident when it comes, I think, to immigration, where parts of the system are still acting as though this was sort of, the 90s or the early noughties and very much welcoming of these people. Others, of course, are saying a much tougher line. And so I do think that lack of a proper plan before coming to office is now being exposed somewhat. And we are seeing, unfortunately, just a continuation in the last couple of years under Rishi Sunak without the silver bullet, if that's what the Tories would call it, without that element of the Rwanda. So I think that, in terms of legal arrival, certainly, I think it's an area where Labour perhaps were more underprepared than others.
Yeah, exactly right. An interesting piece in The Guardian today about John Caldwell, who's the Phones for You founder, former Tory donor, I believe, who's now a Labour donor. He kind of switched over just before the election. He says he's very worried and increasingly nervous about the government's direction and is in despair of politicians. I mean, he's quite a character, this guy, isn't he? I mean, he's quite outspoken. He appears on various different media. We've had him on this show quite a few times as well. But he's clearly worried about this wealth tax sort of scenario which is looming and which Labour refused to deny they're thinking about. What's going on with that?
Well, I think that this comes after a year in which Labour, of course, have had to raise taxes more than most of them privately were hoping or expected to. That's partly because of the worsened fiscal situation, but also because it's a revealed preference of their backbenchers. You know, they constantly want to find more money for more spending. They've been unable to counter spending cuts. The obvious thing then is increased taxes. And so it's no surprise that some of the people that Labour were making sort of nice words to in the 2 or 3 years up until the election are now getting increasingly worried about it. And I suspect we will see some kind of increased tax on the wealthy, whether it's a sort of formal wealth tax, which obviously would only exacerbate this problem that many of John Caldwell's peers are having, which is they're leaving the country right now. We've already had the flight of the non-doms. Remains to be seen. But I do think that, you know, it's a sign increasingly of business falling out of love with this government. And that's on a different range of areas. You've already seen like Morrison's and supermarkets attack the family farms tax. You've already seen the sort of lots of criticism at the CBI about all the stuff that's been going on with, you know, the national insurance rise. And I think that this is another sign, John Caldwell's comments, just a year after Labour got elected, is that not all going terribly well, to say the least.
Yeah, absolutely right. And what about the internal workings of Downing Street? You know, after last week, which was a complete and utter, you know, I can't say the word, but disaster, shall we say, kindly. And Rachel Reeves in tears, floods of tears, sobbing her eyes out at Prime Minister's questions, then appearing on Thursday as if everything was fine, you know, dancing about, smiling and laughing and joking, like some kind of, you know, newly formed member of Fleetwood Mac, you know, and you just think, what's going on exactly? Who exactly is wielding the power? Is Keir Starmer a busted flush? You know, will Rachel Reeves last out the year? So many questions. And again, I mean, maybe it's the media's fault as well. Everybody sort of moved on from. Nobody's talking about it.
Well, I think that what we're expecting to see is get to summer, get to recess, a couple of weeks' time. And then I suspect we will, I was talking to one Labour MP about this, you know, Keir Starmer's in one of his brooding moods, and I think then we might see some changes in terms of the backroom person. Now, Keir Starmer, I think probably broadly to his credit, you know, isn't someone who will necessarily sort of humiliate staff in a public way that some of the previous regimes has, and I think there'll be some quiet people moving in and out of Downing Street. But in terms of the cabinet and the reshuffle, I mean, yeah, I mean, it's difficult to think what Rachel Reeves will do to turn it around. Of course, she's promised endlessly she wouldn't have a budget like the scale of last time. Last time she increased taxes by 38 billion. This time, according to Capital Economics, she'll increase it by 20 billion. So I think that maybe she's got another budget, but if it doesn't turn around soon, you're thinking this is a drag. This is a bad economic messenger. This is someone who, when she speaks, lets down the government's polling. So I'm not really sure. The question is, of course, whether Keir Starmer could ditch her while surviving himself. And history shows that chancellors who act make the Prime Minister overall quite weaker.
Yes, but I mean, the economy is in a terrible place. In the doldrums is a nice way to describe it. And there are plenty of people, some of them in sort of financial institutions, who tell me that there's a pretty big risk that the economy is teetering on the brink of collapse, and that, you know, any more borrowing and suddenly somebody might pull the rug on it.
Yeah, well, my understanding is that I think a lot of these bond markets and traders look for the weakest link in any financial system. Yeah. If we're considered the second or third weakest link, we should be okay. But if we're not, you're very much, as you say, Mike, potentially going to be exposed. I mean, when it came to the spending review a few weeks ago, I wrote that she was not the Iron Chancellor, but the Iron Chancellor. She is betting that these might not come back and haunt her. But I think that there's a real risk of that. Now, in fairness to the Labour government, over the past couple of weeks or so, gilt yields remained broadly stable up until those tiers last Wednesday, but overall it's a very precarious position, and it gives them far less freedom than they thought they might have. They may be in office, but they're not necessarily in power.
Right, and that is the problem, I think. But you're being far too kind to them, James, and we'll have to have a word with you. We'll have to go and have a drink at some point. Thank you very much indeed. James Heal, Deputy Political Editor at The Spectator. And let's get a voice note from Brian on 7-7.
Morning, Mike. Brian from the Southend. Just going on the King's speech yesterday about the 7-7, God rest their souls, and all those who died and got injured. Just to clarify, and someone should tell him, that this wasn't a tragic event. It was a terrorist attack, and a very despicable one at that, killing innocent people. And these people, they don't want to integrate into our society. They want to take it over. They don't want to sort of mix with us. They want their own community. They want to take over our lives. And you've got to start standing up for the people of the country who you should be serving, not other religions or woke people or whatever. It is us, the British people, that should be your priority.
Yeah, very well said, Brian. Thank you very much indeed for that. Quite right. You know, it's all very well to have the nicey words and say, oh, it was a tragic event. Yes, of course it was tragic, but it was not just a tragic event. It was a terrorist attack. It was an unquestionably vicious, ghastly and brutal attack on innocent people, unprovoked. Nothing that anybody did who died deserved it. Nobody should have expected it. You know, these people who did it out of a sense of hatred, out of a sense of absolute and utter disbelief in whatever it is that makes makes our country great and makes Britain a great place. They hate it and they wanted to blow it up, and that's what they did. And they hated it so much that they were willing to die while blowing up innocent people. That's what it was. It wasn't just a tragic event. Brian's absolutely right. Here's one from Ellie in Neath, who says the opt-out facility for domestic abuse victims is because they might have hidden phones their abusers wouldn't allow them to have, and they're a lifeline. I get that. I understand that. So why would you want to send an alert to them then? So they have to opt out. They might not know they're supposed to opt out. They might not know it's even happening. Just seems a very odd thing to be doing. Sean says from Bridlington, this one in, one out idea is a massive con. If one illegal immigrant is sent back to France, we'll take another in from France, who will then invite about 20 relatives in after them. Yeah, so it's one in and then 20 in and one out. I turned off the emergency alarm when it first started a few years back, and it says, Tony, it's quite easy to do in your settings. I think I did that as well. I think I seem to remember we had a very big conversation about this the last time they were going to do it, because it was one of those things that we all thought, it's a bit Big Brotherish, isn't it? I don't want to be alerted by the government because of something that's going on. You know, I don't trust them to do it properly, to be honest. 0344 499 1000 is the number. Coming up, Elon Levy's going to talk to us. Apparently, Benjamin Netanyahu's nominated Donald Trump for the Nobel Peace Prize. They'll never give it to him, will they? Can you imagine? With gritted teeth. I wonder if it was a popular vote, he'd get it. But it's a bit like the Eurovision Song Contest, isn't it? We shall see. 7:22.
That makes me so livid I could cry. That disgusting human being who happens to be the Mayor of London, who also happens to hold the title of the Police and Crime Commissioner as part of that role, that responsibility, obfuscating, gaslighting, bullying, belittling. These are little girls, underage minors, being raped by gangs in our capital city. You do not play games over this.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back to Morning Glory, 7:25. I'm Mike Graham with you all the way through. I guarantee they'll use the alerts to tell you it's a little bit warm today or to cut back on electric, and because we haven't got any left. Says Phil. Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised. Mike says, Pete in Altrincham, some people who may be suffering from domestic abuse may have a hidden second phone. With the alert going off, it may expose this and put them in danger from their partner. Now, I get that. I get that. I've been told that. I understand it. I just don't understand what the whole alert thing is for. What are we going to, what are they going to alert us to? And can you imagine if there was really something terrible happening, they'd probably forget to do it. Be like the automatic line judge at Wimbledon, Oh, yeah, we're sorry, we forgot to warn you that the Russians were invading Britain because the bloke switched it off by mistake. Sorry, don't worry, just learn Russian. Phil has got something to say about Macron.
Mike, Phil from Nottingham. Sorry to be pedantic, but shouldn't it be called one in, one out, one in again?
Yes, probably, yeah. And look at that, remember, who could forget that amazing scene of Starmer and Macron riding together on the back of that armoured truck, or whatever it was, armoured car. Ridiculous looking in Paris. Was it this year? I suppose it was last year, wasn't it? Let's talk to Elon Levy, former Israeli government spokesperson and host of Israel State of a Nation podcast. Donald Trump has been entertaining Benjamin Netanyahu, who yesterday apparently nominated him for the Nobel Peace Prize. Have a look.
The president has already realized great opportunities. He forged the Abraham Accords. He's forging peace as we speak, in one country, in one region after the other. So I want to present to you, Mr. President, the letter I sent to the Nobel Prize Committee. It's nominating you for the Peace Prize, which is well deserved, and you should get it.
Thank you very much. This I didn't know. Wow. Thank you very much. Coming from you in particular, this is very meaningful. Thank you very much, baby.
Thank you. Thank you for everything you're doing.
Thank you.
All very civilised. Elon, very good morning to you.
Good morning, Mike.
So, what have we seen coming out of this particular summit? Anything like a ceasefire?
First of all, I hope that no one in Britain gets the sort of emergency alerts we've been receiving on our phones in Israel telling us that Iranian ballistic missiles are incoming. We had 12 days of those alerts going off non-stop, and I can guarantee it really makes your heart jump out through your throat. So hopefully it'll remain just a test, and everyone in Britain will, keep calm, carry on, and stay safe.
Yes.
As for what's going on in the White House, look, we're seeing Prime Minister Netanyahu trying to butter up President Trump, just like Keir Starmer tried to butter him up with that letter inviting him on a state visit to the UK. But by Jove, President Trump really does deserve a Nobel Peace Prize. He deserved it for making peace between Israel and the UAE, Bahrain, and Morocco during his first term.
Yeah.
And now he's got a massive challenge ahead of him because President Trump wants to transform the Middle East. He not only wants to end the war that Hamas started with some sort of ceasefire, but he wants to get normalization, peace agreements between Israel and Saudi Arabia, even Syria, even Lebanon. And if he is able to pull that off and to make peace between those countries that have always opposed Israel and Israel, then I can't see any reason not to give him a Nobel Peace Prize.
Well, I mean, Israel's done the hard yards in a way, hasn't it, by kind of, cutting the claws off of Hezbollah and to some extent Hamas and a bit of Iran as well. But America kind of finished the job, if you like, with Iran. I mean, Iran seems to have gone very quiet.
Yeah, and I think we really see here with what happened in Iran a really enduring testament to the power of the Israeli-American alliance and partnership, because Israel went in, attacked Iran's ballistic missile facilities, attacked the nuclear facilities, and President Trump went in and delivered the death blow to Fordo. But it's not over, because Iran is now angry, humiliated, plotting revenge, looking at the Middle East, where its whole plan of surrounding Israel with proxy armies and terrorist groups has collapsed. Hezbollah is so weak it couldn't even come to Iran's defense while Israel and the US were taking out its nuclear facilities. And the question now, how do you keep Iran in a box? How do you contain it? How do you stop the Islamic Republic that has sown so much chaos, not just around the Middle East, brought political violence to the UK as well? How do you stop it getting back to its strategy of destabilizing the Middle East? President Trump is saying there are going to be talks happening with Iran, and I really hope that the United States is able to tell the Iranians it's game over. Stop saying death to America, death to Britain, death to Israel. Stop wishing death to everyone. It's childish, it's cartoonish. It's time to make peace and accept the reality in the Middle East.
Yeah. And what about the sort of rise of Syria? We saw David Lammy, you know, your favourite foreign minister, going off to see the new leader of Syria, who used to be a terrorist and isn't now, apparently. I know Donald Trump went to see him as well. But we're giving them money. There's talk that it's becoming slightly more radical. It's no longer quite as nicey as it was when he took over. And yes, he's not Bashar al-Assad, but is there a worry from Israel's point of view about Syria?
Yeah, of course. Israel is saying that al-Shara is a wolf in sheep's clothing, but they're definitely making the right noises. And that means if there is an opportunity for a new Syria, for a Syria more at peace with its neighbors, we should explore it. It means don't be naive. Treat everything skeptically, you know, trust and verify, as they say. But the new Syrian government is going to want to rebuild the country and not start being aggressive towards its neighbors. And we've seen positive developments. Hey, they've helped to cut down the smuggling routes to Hezbollah. They've been taken out of the Iranian orbit. These are positive developments. And there's talk of maybe a peace agreement between Israel and Syria, or at least some non-belligerency. And if that's possible, it should absolutely be explored. And of course, make sure to keep Syria on side with the West when other countries, certainly China, are also going to be trying to tempt it into their orbit.
Right. And just finally on the peace deal, if there is a ceasefire, what news of any more released hostages?
Israel wants to get a deal that will get the hostages out and preferably end the war, with Hamas leaving power, saying sayonara, and allowing the people of Gaza to build a better future. The deal on the table at the moment is a terrible one. Terrible. It would have a 60-day ceasefire. Israel would get only 10 living hostages out of 20, so it keeps 10 trapped there. 18 bodies, another 12 bodies trapped there, and basically gives Hamas a seat at the table to negotiate what happens the day after. The deal that the Qataris are proposing basically allows Hamas to keep on to living and dead hostages as bargaining chips to try to survive the war that it started. And even if Israel is forced to make this deal with the devil, even if Israel pays this ransom to get back the hostages who are in the tunnels under Gaza, it doesn't let Hamas off the hook. The demand the whole world needs to make. Hamas must release them immediately, unconditionally. There is no excuse to hold on to those hostages and torture them in tunnels under Gaza.
No, absolutely. Elon, good to talk to you. Thanks very much indeed. Elon Levy, the former Israeli government spokesperson, host of Israel State of a Nation podcast. It is extraordinary, isn't it, that the hostages are still, even now, being held all those months and years after that terrible attack on October the 7th in 2023. The migrant tracker number there, you can see it, 44,359. I said it would reach 45,000, maybe even 50,000 by July the 4th. I don't think we're far off. I know that's past, but, you know, we're really very, very close to that number. Let's get a voice note from Nick.
Hi, Mike. Nick from Solihull. Just listening to you on TV about not mentioning Islamic terrorists in 7/7. When the IRA did any bombings, mainly in London as well as Northern Ireland, but the horrific ones in London, they always said IRA terrorists, didn't they? But they won't say Muslim terrorists. Cheerio, Mike. Bye.
Yeah, Nick, it's an interesting thing, isn't it? It's an interesting a demarcation that you point out there. I don't know why everyone's so frightened to say what it is. You know, it really is remarkable, ridiculous. Talking of Nobel Peace Prizes, maybe we should ask Keir Starmer whether Donald Trump should get one.
And as well as Matt, I'm delighted that the inspiring Nobel Peace Nobel Prize winner said...
Dear God. This is Morning Glory.
across the UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back to Morning Glory, 7:36. I'm Mike Graham with you all the way through until 10 o'clock, of course, when Julie Hartley-Brewitt will be here. Margaret in Birmingham says, Donald Trump's brilliant. He should get the Nobel Peace Prize. Just don't let Starmer announce it. My favourite two-tier mash-up speech. Please play it again, Mike. Well, we might do. Barry says this. Brian was spot on about the King. He's totally out of touch and isn't doing a good job. Doesn't he realise the direction the country is heading in presently? The royal family will be extinct in a few decades. He's not my king. A lot of people are not very happy with King Charles this morning. Mike, you have to ask yourself, why does our government not talk about Islamic terrorism but will mention far-right terrorism? What are they scared of exactly, says Michael, who's still apparently halfway up a mountain. OK, I wonder which mountain you're halfway up. Do let us know. Let's get a voice note from Gary.
Morning, Mike. It's Gary from Canterbury. Yeah, the picture you just showed of Macron and Starmer, I thought they just got married or something. Just standing at the doorway, looking out happily, you know, after their little engagement. I'm thinking, oh, how lovely and what a tender moment they're having. Apart from that, I'm getting Peter Bleksley's tickets. I think he's just fantastic. Anyway, great show, Mike. Keep up the good work.
Gary, thank you very much indeed. Let's speak to Anne-Elizabeth Moutet, who's a French journalist and Telegraph columnist. Anne-Elizabeth, a very good morning to you.
Good morning, bonjour.
Bonjour, thank you very much for joining us. So, we have another international summit on our hands. The two, the brothers in arms, if you like, Keir Starmer and Emmanuel Macron. They seem very fond of each other. I'm not sure there's much point to this, is there?
There is a bit of point to this because of Donald Trump, who sort of simplified a great deal of the way various European countries look at one another. And there's also a point because of Ukraine, because Britain and France are the two countries that are two members of the Security Council of the UN. They have similar-sized armies, they have the same power of deployment, and basically they're the big boys in the room, and it doesn't much matter whether there was Brexit or not. It's a continent that's been attacked by Russia. Russia is now bringing in addition to North Koreans, Laotians, and it's sort of looking for meat to attack Ukraine and possibly other countries, certainly in places like Finland and the Baltic states. Yeah. They absolutely believe that the Russians are coming. So it sort of simplifies, you know, the arguments that you might have with one another.
Yes,
I'm not saying it's making them disappear.
No. Well, I think, I mean, certainly from Britain's point of view, Keir Starmer's got plenty of problems on the domestic front that he could be dealing with, and I guess this gives him a kind of respite from that. And maybe similarly, it does the same thing for Emmanuel Macron, who's not terribly popular in his own country, is he?
Well, no, last year, exactly a year ago, he called a snap election, which went very badly for him because people, you know, it's usually you tell people, well, give me a different answer from last time. And people say, yeah, no, we meant it the first time, you know, get on with it. And so he lost the House. But the French president in the French constitution is responsible for defense and foreign affairs, and therefore Macron is sort of legitimate to go to Britain to discuss with the Starmer. He's always very happy to have the wonderful sort of gold dust of King Charles and the Prince and Princess of Wales. There's no, I mean, it's not a losing proposition for him, and Camilla actually is in very good terms with Madame Macron, Brigitte Macron. They've got things in common. They like books. So they have a sense of humour. They're nice women, both of them, and the whole thing is wonderful for optics.
Yes. Well, some people here who are not that keen on Prime Minister Keir Starmer were saying they hope that Mrs. Macron might give him a bit of a slap when she sees him.
She doesn't make a habit of it, and we've been watching her for a long time. I think every married couple, and they really are a partnership, these two. Every now and then you sort of, you know, you have a tiff. She didn't exactly slap him, she shoved him.
She sort of shoved him, yeah.
And many people in the country said, oh, she should do this more often, but, you know.
No, quite. But the King has come out this morning and will say this, I believe, in the course of the next couple of hours, that there should be no borders, effectively, between Britain and France in their quest to solve what he calls complex threats, which again, is an indicator that, you know, there are some people in this country who don't understand the big problem that we have with France, which is the migrants coming here every single day on small boats.
Yes, and also all the difficulties that France made to Britain at the time of Brexit. So it's a beautifully optimistic view of things, and certainly it is, because if Russia decides to bomb us, or indeed they're already sending agents in various countries and using bot farms to push divisive memes, etc. So there is an enemy, and that enemy will not make a difference. But the thing about migrants is a few things have changed in France. First of all, we have a Home Secretary who is not a Macronista but a Républicain, and he is called Bruno Retailleau. He was elected leader of his party and therefore probable presidential candidate in 27. He's a Catholic from Vendée. He's an interesting character, and he is much firmer about these things. And second, immigration is also an issue in France, and we have municipal elections next year. We've got a presidential election in 27 where Macron cannot run, but he's already said that he might run 5 years later because he's allowed to do that again. And immigration is definitely a topic that gets people to lose or win elections in France now.
It does, yeah. And what did the French think of this meeting this week?
We like the British monarchy. It's dignified. It's got fantastic and beautiful pomp. They don't seem to be putting a foot wrong. Even the scandals are fun, and therefore it's something that the French, it brings a smile to a French face. We ever since the Entente Cordiale, nobody has poked fun as a British monarch in France. So it's a positive for many reasons, that visit.
Well, who knows? Maybe they'll wheel out Prince Andrew now that he's been cleared by the FBI. Maybe he'll have a place at the table as well. But
I was trying not to mention him.
I wouldn't hold your breath on that one, but here we are. Thank you. And Elizabeth Boutet, they're reporting into us as a French journalist and Telegraph columnist. Incredible times where you get Emmanuel Macron, because he loves the French, he loves the British monarchy, coming to London to spend time with Keir Starmer. Is there anything going to come out of it, though? That's the point, I would say. Andrew's in Fife, wants to talk about the benefits scenario. Andrew, very good morning to you.
Hi, good morning, Mike. Thanks for having me. I'd just like to say I love the work that you do. I've been watching your show every morning now on my way to
Top
work
man,
for the
thank
last
you.
4 months. So appreciate you having me on.
Thank you. What would you like to say?
So my wife, she's a dedicated community staff nurse in Glen Office, right? She's spent years caring for patients across the community, often under immense pressure with little recognition.
Right.
So after suffering with chronic pain and fatigue, she was finally diagnosed with fibromyalgia, so a long-term condition that now affects her daily mobility and quality of life. So simple tasks like cooking or getting out of the bath require my help, and have done for the last 2 years. Obviously, it's taken the NHS about a year to 2 years to get her formally diagnosed, but that's another matter.
Right.
So, follow medical advice. She applied for an ADP. It's called an Adult Disability Payment through Social Security Scotland.
Right.
It's a benefit designed to support people with long-term health conditions, and her application was rejected by just 1 point on a rigid point-based assessment system.
Right.
So, despite a clear and genuine need, she's now forced into a long bureaucratic appeal process that feels completely dehumanising and broken. And the fact that, we're a hard-working tax-paying family with 2 kids. I'm an inspection engineer. I work away a lot. So my wife is left on her own with the kids a lot of the time.
Right.
It just seems so deeply unjust that someone who's spent her life caring for others, often at the expense of her own health, now has to fight for basic support.
Yeah.
When you have people coming over on boats and getting absolutely everything they need.
Yeah.
They're getting
It's shocking, isn't it?
Houses, they're getting phones, driving lessons, therapy, which they have a good authority and a good source. That costs roughly about £800 per day, because they have taxis waiting outside for them while they're in their therapy session. I'm at the point now, Mike, where it's like I had to phone and talk about this because it isn't about division. It's about fairness and dignity, and we need so much reform to ensure that our assessment systems are a lot more compassionate.
Of course.
And that those that dedicate their lives to others aren't abandoned when they need the support the most.
No, of course. And tell me about Tell me about the point system. I mean, the point system, you get points for presumably things that you can't do. How is she managed to not get enough points? How many points are you supposed to have?
Well, she literally fell short by 1 point. So
1 point out of how many? How many do you have to have?
I think, don't quote me, I think it's about 8 or 9.
Right, okay.
So I think it's like 8 or 9 in order to qualify. She fell short by 1 point.
Yeah.
And the fact that, she has to be, so now she spent hours yesterday actually putting in something which is called a redetermination.
Right.
So it's almost like an appeal, but it's like an appeal before the appeal. If this redetermination doesn't get accepted, she then has to go through another bureaucratic process to do an appeal to try and get the help that she genuinely needs. And it's like, well, where's the due process? Where's the bureaucratic process for undocumented migrants who in 2023, by the way, according to the Home Office, reported spending over $3 billion on hotel accommodation alone.
Yeah.
So I can't even imagine. I don't want to know what it is right now.
Yeah, it's awful. Absolutely awful. Listen, Andrew, I'm really pleased you called. Thank you so much for highlighting that problem. So many people around this country who want and need some support and assistance from the state because they've certainly paid into it. Now they need a little bit of help because that's what they're entitled to. Find themselves getting turned down, like Andrew's wife. But no chance of getting turned down if you come here from somewhere else. And that's what people are so fed up with. That's what people are sick to the back teeth about, because that is not fair. And people in this country are fair. Mostly people are fair-minded. Mostly people are willing to accept that some people are less fortunate than them, and they're happy for them to be helped out. But what they're not happy about is the unfair system which is emerging now, in which it means that people can claim for a free car if they've got constipation or tennis elbow or various number of bizarre ailments which apparently make people's ability to qualify for a car under the Motability Scheme even easier. It's a shocking state of affairs, it really is. There's a story in The Sun, which we talked about the other week. We're going to talk some more about it coming up a little bit later on. Howard in Suffolk says this: it's my observation that the way Starmer operates, or more accurately his advisors and scriptwriters, is get the headline on mainstream media when 90% of the sound asleep audience believe everything they're told. In Starmer's world, that's it. Job done. Forget about it and move on to the next thing. However, the masses are slowly waking up, so he will hit the buffers before much longer. I think that's right. And Julian says, morning, Mike. The Uni Party decided to open our borders without a plan and have been increasing the numbers every year. Now they've woken up to the fact they were idiotic and wrong. But now the country is virtually bankrupt. They're going to screw working people for every penny to bail the idiots out. It's no wonder people are leaving this toxic isle and searching for refuge. Well, quite. We'll be talking about that coming up in the next hour. Coming next hour, we're going to talk about yet another crisis. It's the drugs crisis in our prisons. People are apparently sitting around in prison, getting high and watching TV, just like they are in every other part of the bleeding country. But you're not supposed to be doing it when you're in jail. 7:49.
happened in recent years with the changes in classification of cannabis, which has happened, with policies that have shifted like the sands. Sometimes don't stop and search young black people if you smell cannabis, because that could be construed as racist. Now we have Marsh saying it's an indicator of crime. Do something about it. Policing has got itself in a tremendous twist over all of this.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back to Morning Glory. I'm Mike Graham with you all the way through, of course, until 10 o'clock. Excuse me. One from Kenny in Edinburgh says, doesn't the government think the French have had enough money from the UK taxpayer without making us pay to wine and dine their president as well? This man is taking the bloody mickey and should not be allowed to step foot on British soil again, or at least until he gives us our money back. I don't care if banning him would cause a diplomatic problem. Well, you know, you do wonder, as the Mail has asked this morning, what he's done with the £771 million that we've given him. They say hand it back. Apparently, he comes into Britain today under huge pressure to finally crack the escalating small boats crisis. But what on earth is he going to be able to do? Because so far he hasn't been able to do anything. Arrival numbers are up 56% so far this year, compared with the same period in 2024. 2,599 people coming into the country last week alone. A total of 172,255 small boat migrants have reached Britain since the crisis began in 2018. When I think Macron was in charge, wasn't he? He's been in charge for such a long time, and he's still in charge. And we've given them 771 million, and nothing's happened. Nothing's changed. In fact, it's got worse. Brilliant. I mean, as we said, I think he thought that when we said here's £1 million for every migrant, I think he thought that meant for every £1 million he sends us one. You know. Bizarre. Let's talk to Vanessa Frake, though, former prison governor and author, because a couple of stories this morning, Vanessa, have caught our eye. One, that apparently the drugs crisis in prison has got worse and worse and worse, probably since you were doing your job there. Seizures by prison officers have got reached a record high, and apparently people say they can get drugs easier in prison than they can outside. Incredible. Morning.
Good morning, Mike. Yeah, I mean, I think it's become an endemic of our prison system, and I think that there's many reasons for that. One of which is overcrowding. One is lack of purposeful activity. So prisoners are spending longer in their cells, maybe only out of their cells for a couple of hours a day. So boredom sets in, and yeah, you're right, stuck in a cell, locked up, watching TV. So what do? They turn to drugs. I mean, some of the statistics are horrendous. Nearly at HMP Wood Hill, which is a high security jail, 42% of prisoners tested positive for drug use. Well, that's unacceptable. And I think we've done very little to stop the drones. All we've done is implement a 400-metre no-fly zone. Well, I'm sorry, but these are sophisticated drones. Yeah. These aren't your 50 quid drones from Argos. These are drones that cost thousands of pounds. They're operated by pilots who are expert at it. They can be in and out, delivering many kilos of drugs in 20 seconds. Yeah. So I think when the MOJ says, we have a zero tolerance to drugs and we've implemented a no-fly zone, they think that's that. And of course, that isn't that. And this has implications for us all. No, because if more prisoners, most prisoners will be released back into the community at some stage. Right. And by going out, high on drugs or a serious drug addict, they're going to continue that and commit crime in the community to fund that habit.
Right.
And that's a worry for us all, I think.
Yeah, and also it's going to connect more people with more drug dealers, isn't it, presumably? Because if you're in prison and you might not know the dealer who's bringing the drugs into you, but you will get to know him, and so when you come out, you might then either go and work for him or certainly go and use his facilities.
Yeah, absolutely. And we know that, you know, prisons are pretty good at keeping people, prisoners inside jails. We have the odd escape here and there, but when you think about the amount of prisoners we lock up, yeah, we're good at keeping them inside. But actually, what we're not very good at is rehabilitation. I've said this many times, Mike, to you. You know, we have the worst rehabilitation rates in Western Europe,
Right.
and that has consequences for us all.
Yeah, it really does. Another story today that I wanted to mention to you, Vanessa, is the one where government review is going to recommend, basically, that we don't send what they call low-tier criminals like burglars, thieves, robbers and drug addicts to prison at all. That somehow, you know, they bypass prison because there's frankly no room for them, and we give them different and alternative sorts of sentences. You know, that's not going to be much of a deterrent, is it?
No, it's a difficult one, because I do think that there are a lot of people who are locked up who shouldn't be locked up, who would be far better serving their sentences in the community. But that's on the basis that the community sentences are robust and address offending behaviour. And at the moment, I don't think that our community sentences are robust enough. So again, that is a bit of a worry, unless they strengthen our community services and our monitoring services and use technology to monitor prisoners much better in the community.
Well, that's right, because if you don't really punish them, or at least they don't even have a concern that they're going to be likely sent to prison, then, you know, I don't think that's going to be any disincentive for them to carry on committing crime. Vanessa, great to talk to you. Thanks very much indeed. Vanessa Frake there. Let's get a voice note from Sean on 7-7.
Morning, Mike. Sean from Grimsby. Listening to Prince Charles saying, oh, yeah, well, we need to not be divided and all this type of stuff. I mean, where's this bloke been for all his life? You know, we're already divided, and we're divided because we have attack after attack after attack of these violent jihadists, whilst giving them concession after concession after concession, whilst not receiving any concessions. You know, this is why we're divided. When two cultures clash, it always ends in trouble, mate. Great show, Mike.
Sean, thanks very much indeed. Yeah, I mean, I think most people are fed up to the back teeth of being told, you know, don't be divided. Don't allow people to divide us. Well, you know, maybe you should stop people from bombing us. I wish you'd stop playing that alert, says Dale. I keep thinking my passenger side detection is alerting me while I'm driving. Sorry about that. Nobody knows why you're supposed to be playing it either. Is there a missile coming in? What? Russians? The French? I don't know. Coming up, loads more after the news.
Is it transphobic to say only women have a cervix?
Well, it is something that shouldn't be said. It is not right. A woman is an adult female, and the court has made that absolutely clear. I actually welcome the judgment because I think it gives real clarity. It allows those that have got to draw up guidance to be really clear about what that guidance should say. If you want to fight for Remain, vote Labour. Now, there are some who say we don't need Brexit to work. We need to reverse it. I couldn't disagree more. Day after day, there are new allegations of sleaze, of favours, of privileged access. And it's all very well the Prime Minister saying, well, say now, well, I'm paying for it.
You've decided to repay £6,000 worth of gifts.
Lord Ali is facing an investigation. I wonder how concerned you are that your biggest donor was not fully transparent.
Are you saying you made a mistake?
It was right for me to make those repayments. Thank you. course, I wouldn't want Donald Trump round for dinner. But don't underestimate the danger to the world if Trump is re-elected this time around. I'm anti-Trump. I would like to send my warmest congratulations to President Trump on his inauguration as the 47th President of the United States.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back to Morning Glory. It's coming up to 3 minutes past 8, and the sun is up, ladies and gentlemen. The rain was here yesterday, but it all seems to have cleared away, so it's going to be a lovely day. It's Tuesday, the 8th of July. We've got plenty to talk about. Ryan Sobey, Deputy Political Editor at The Sun, is here with us. We're going to be talking to him about a great many things, including Pat McFadden and the alert test. Nobody knows why, but the government are going to do an alert test on the 7th of September. That's what it's going to sound like. Already people are telling me how I can switch it off from the phone because they just don't want to hear it. I seem to remember this happened a year or two ago, and we did the same thing then. Also, front pages covered in a whole variety of different stories, much of it to do with the Prime Minister meeting Emmanuel Macron, the French President, today. A migrant deal, apparently one in, one out, is going to be the order of the day. Keir Starmer's going to try and persuade Emmanuel Macron that that's what we should be doing. Not many people have got a terrible great deal of hope for that working, though. Hand back our £771 million, Monsieur Macron, it says on the front page of the Daily Mail. That's how much money we've given them, and so far, unfortunately, all we've had in return is an awful lot of migrants. 172,255 to be precise, since the small boat crisis reached its beginning in 2018, and he's been in charge pretty much throughout that entire period. Also, bosses are facing a ban on NDA deals. That's according to The Guardian. That's a story that's emanating from the new kind of banter rules and the new workers' rights that Angela Rayner is apparently going to impose on companies up and down the country. Also, King Charles has been talking about how there should be no borders between us and the French. A lot of people saying this morning, he doesn't speak for us. He's not our king. We were monarchists when the Queen was around, but we're not that keen on the way the King is purporting himself when it comes to not only today making out that our borders are not as sacrosanct as they should be, but also yesterday over the whole 7/7 commemoration, where he was very kind of, shall we say, even-handed about the fact that, you know, we should not let division divide us, without really mentioning who it was that had actually blown us up in the first place. Let's get a voice note from all of you to see what you've been saying so far.
Morning, Mike. It's Andy from Birmingham.
Hi, Mike. Mark from Manchester.
Good morning, Mike. It's Judy from, excuse me, Altos, West Yorkshire.
Morning, Mike. It's Paula in Liverpool. I feel as though I ring about this every single week.
Hello, Mike. It's Michael from the Dustbin of the World, Norwich.
Morning, Mike and the team. Ben from Essex, up at 5, driving into London to complete my day's work.
Great show, and really enjoyed the summary of this useless government.
Good morning, Mike. Phil from Nottingham. One of these working people. I got up at 5. I've done my ironing. I've cleaned the kitchen. I've emptied the dishwasher. All the usual guff. Made sandwiches. And now I'm walking the dog.
And why not, indeed? Air Miles Andy cleared for takeoff is the front page of The Sun. Apparently Prince Andrew can now end his self-imposed travel ban and return to being Air Miles Andy after a leaked memo revealed the FBI is apparently closing its investigation into his links with Jeffrey Epstein. And the Daily Star says they've seen a story about some scientists who have decided that how to avoid a hangover is to get a patch. You basically put it on and it tells you when to stop drinking. Yeah, well, I mean, we've got plenty of suggestions on that one as well. Steve from Church Stretton says you don't need a tablet or a patch to tell you when you've had one too many. You just need a mother-in-law who laughs as you go around the kitchen table saying never again, and her dogs bite your ankle every time you pass. Fair enough. And with the alerts, says Simon in Durham, just disable it on your phone. Job done. Personally, I don't need to know what the government think I should know. They can get stuffed. Well, let's have a look, actually, just before we talk to Ryan Sabey, at Pat McFadden on the alert test. See if you can make any sense of this.
So we tell the public well in advance that the test is coming, so everyone knows the date and the time. And when it comes to vulnerable groups, for example, potential victims of domestic violence, we have specific communication with charities in that field, and there is advice on the government alert website for people to opt out of the test if they want to. We don't want people to opt out, but we understand there might be circumstances where the people are particularly vulnerable where they'll choose to do so.
Yes, not very important, is it? I don't think, anyway. Ryan Sabey, very good morning to you. Kevin in Tamworth sums things up rather well. He says the emergency alarm should go off in number 10 every time an illegal migrant arrives. That might wake them up. Great show earlier on with you and Peter. By the way, I've got my tickets to see him already. Well done, Kevin in Tamworth. Let's talk to Ryan Sabey, though, Deputy Police Officer at The Sun. Ryan, very good morning to you.
Good morning, Mike.
We're sort of picking a bit on Pat McFadden this morning because it seems to me there's a few more important things going on in the world than worrying about a fake alert on the 7th of September that he seems to be trying to sell us. And as you can see from many of our members of the audience, they're a bit more concerned about what's going on in the Channel, a bit more concerned about how many migrants are coming in, and a bit more concerned about when the alert's going to go off for that.
Yeah, no, exactly. And I think Pat McFadden setting out his stall on this national alert system well in advance to warn people. And I think that this government just feels like it's one of those things it has to do. And almost like if you run a public service, run a school, run a hospital, you have to do some kind of risk assessment. And this is part of a big national risk assessment. Some people will say it's going too far, but if there is a national emergency, I guess people will be complaining and moaning at the government if people could be alerted and they are not alerted in time. So I feel like it's a little bit of a tick box exercise, but you never know when it may come in handy.
Well, that's right. I mean, the thing is that, you know, there is an emergency in this country. A lot of people say they should be calling it a national emergency, and I think Nigel Farage has done that already. But the numbers coming over reaching epic proportions. We're nearly up to 45,000 in the year since Labour government got in July the 4th of last year. Supposedly, the migrant deal is going to be high on the agenda for Macron and Starmer, but does anybody really believe they'll come to any kind of arrangement that will make any difference?
It seems that this deal, this one-in, one-out deal that could be struck with France this week, seems to be in a little bit of a sticky place. Let's see what happens. These things often go down to the wire, and negotiations will be carrying on over the next 48 hours. That big political day will happen on Thursday, so we can expect lots of pomp, lots of pageantry before that, and a state banquet. But it's that moment on Thursday where Westminster will be training its eyes on and what kind of arrangements Great Britain and France can come up with, and migrants will be top of that agenda. Sir Keir, I remember being at the G7 not that long ago, and him here actually laying it down on the line to Emmanuel Macron to say, this is of the utmost importance, and almost saying you've got to get your act in gear because the UK is paying France a hell of a lot of money, the best part, £750 million over the last few years, and it doesn't seem that much is being done on their side.
Well, as Peter Blexley called it this morning, the world's most expensive Stanley knife, isn't it? Which is the thing they used to puncture a dinghy, one dinghy, just a few days ago. If they did that every single day, maybe it might be worth the money.
Yeah, no, exactly. And I think we've seen, there's some figures around this morning that in Belgium, they've actually reduced the number of crossings by about 90% because they do intercept them. Now, I know that's a different situation to France, but it does seem that more stringent tactics should be used, because we're just seeing the numbers, they have been out of control for a long time. We had those first crossings in about 2018. And every single year, they seem to be getting higher and higher. And this time, from now, compared to this time last year, we seem to be up by about 40-odd%, which just shows you that effectively the whole situation is out of control. 20,000 this year. Yeah. And that is why, as well as defence, security, technology, that will be the issues that the Prime Minister will be talking to with France this week. Illegal migration will be top of his agenda because he has to get a handle on it.
Yeah, he really does. And I mean, otherwise, elsewhere in the economy, we've got problems all over the place. You know, and Rachel Reeves is due to make a speech, I think, a Mansion House speech next week. She's being warned by people in the Building Society business, Yorkshire Building Society nationwide. They're saying that if she does this expected move, which is to cut the ISA amount that you can put in tax-free, which is 20,000 currently, down to 4,000, it will restrict growth. It will kill growth, in fact. So they're hopeful that she won't do it. But she's under still immense pressure. I was just saying to James Hill in the last hour, you know, last week's events, you know, of her bursting into tears and then suddenly being all smiles on Thursday, you know, it's all kind of moved off the agenda, hasn't it? Nobody's really talking about it now.
Yeah, but the economy will be front and centre, obviously, of where a very, very busy summer. She is going to have to grapple with finding billions and billions of pounds. Now, she says those fiscal rules are ironclad, so the extra borrowing is out of the window. It seems like all those Whitehall departments cannot cut any more spending. It seems like they are cut to the absolute bone. So one of the few things that she can really do is raise taxes. It seems like it's the only avenue for her to go down. And as you say, that one of the issues on the agenda is cutting that tax-free allowance when it comes to ISAs, and the building societies are kicking off because they use that money to actually access a lot of money, which keeps mortgage costs down. So they feel that if that policy is implemented, it'll actually push up people's mortgage costs. But there's lots of talk about the wealth tax. It seems like Whitehall are very keen to play that down, but Downing Street weren't totally ruling that out yesterday. So there's a lot of money to be found, but there's not many avenues to actually raise the cash, because the big money raisers, income tax, national insurance, VAT, they have been ruled out. They were in that Labour manifesto last year, and at the moment she can't touch those. And if she does, she'd have broken one of those Labour manifesto pledges.
Right. Yeah, I mean, I'm looking at a figure here. £49.8 billion was the amount that British savers put into cash ISAs last year, which was up 6% on the previous year. And if you cut that down by, say, a fifth and say to people, oh, you can only put £4,000 in now, suddenly they've only got 10 billion instead of 49. I mean, it doesn't make any sense. I don't know anyone. And she supposedly thinks that this will be a catalyst for people to put more money into the stock market. And I don't know any financial advisor who says that will happen. They say it won't happen.
Yeah, I expect, and speaking to people in and around government, that tax-free allowance, that it looks like it's on the cards that there will be a cut from 20,000, but I feel like it won't go down to as low as 5, but it certainly is on the table as something they're looking at to raise money. But you have to offset every single decision, as a balance on the other side, and it looks like the mortgage rates could go up, and those warning sounds have been sounded by the likes of Yorkshire Building Society, Coventry, Skipton, and all the others. I'm sure will be saying, look, just hold off. If you have to do it, just don't be as drastic.
And the big problem that's going to continue to come up, notwithstanding the welfare bill last week and the defeat that Starmer had to kind of suffer in the House of Commons, you know, people are getting more and more fed up. Certainly our listeners and viewers are getting more and more fed up with people claiming for things that they shouldn't be claiming for people getting money from the benefit system they shouldn't be getting, and also these new ridiculous ailments that are being produced for people to get Motability cars. All of these stories are feeding into a system which is going to make ordinary people who work for a living and who pay tax and who strive every single day get more and more fed up with this government.
Yeah, I think there's a general sense of unfairness, as you say, people who are going out to work every day to provide for their families, and they do see, particularly in the case of Motability, where they see that people using some of their benefit money, or some of that money is going towards a flash new car. And it really, really riles people. And I think some people feel like that the system has just got totally out of control. There's absolutely no issue with people who do genuinely need these cars. But I think sometimes it's been found that relatives may have been using these cars, or may be able to have use of it. And for that reason, flying around in a flash new BMW or whatever car it may well be, just doesn't seem that it's playing by the rules. So I think that's where there's that sense of unfairness, and I think that's one thing that the government has to iron out.
Yeah, and we haven't had one of these for a while, so I thought I might as well ask you about it. Sean Woodcock claimed on his parliamentary expenses for 2 duvets, a pair of pillows and a set of brushed cotton bed sheets from Marks and Spencer's. He also bought 4 luxury Egyptian cotton towels along with a tube of Magnolia shower cream, according to details obtained by the Daily Mail. We used to have one of these every couple of days, didn't we? £216 worth of luxury Marks and Spencer's bedding, he's claimed. He's a newly elected MP. He said he was misinformed.
Yeah, no, he seems to say that he was told by a colleague. I mean, you kind of read the rules before you go and purchase this, but I don't understand why. I mean, sometimes I think you look at you go into Marks and Spencer's or wherever, and you're going to put some expensive duvet on your expenses. You just don't. It just doesn't pass the smell test. So I think he should have been wiser to this and just paid for it out of his own pocket, and certainly not expected the taxpayer to pay for it. And quite rightly, he's paid it all back.
Well, thank goodness. Thank goodness they've changed the rules on all of this. There's a couple of other ones which have come in as well. Under rejected expenses include a claim submitted by Labour MP Jill Furness for £210 worth of IKEA furniture, including a gaming desk and an office chair, so a member of her team could work from home. Marvellous, isn't it?
Exactly. Yeah. More importantly, they should be coming into the office to actually collaborate with their colleagues, maybe. But it does seem like a lot of money is still being spent on this, and they probably need to tighten that up as well.
Yeah, absolutely. A bit of breaking news just before we let you go, Ryan. You'll be probably writing about this today. Norman Tebbit, one of Margaret Thatcher's most loyal supporters during her years of power, has died at the age of 94. A remarkable man, Norman Tebbit, wasn't he? He was terribly badly injured in the Brighton bombing. His wife was, I think, wheelchair bound as a result of them both being blown up and falling through the floor in that terrible IRA bombing. Also, he was kind of he was her kind of enforcer, wasn't he, Margaret Thatcher's? He was known as the skinhead.
Yeah, no, exactly, and we'll all go back to those scenes and those events around Brighton at that Tory party conference in the 1980s, and the effect that had on both him and his wife. And I've spoken to Lord Tebbit many times. He'd written for us over the years, and as you say, he was a kind of Mr. Fix-It for Mrs. Thatcher. Our thoughts are with his family.
Yeah, absolutely, they will be. Norman Tebbit dies today at the age of 94. Ryan Savey, great to talk to you. Thanks very much indeed. Deputy Political Editor at The Sun. Debbie says this morning, Mike, you sound really fed up with this country today, but please don't leave us. We can't keep fighting without you. Don't worry, I'm not going anywhere. This is too good to miss what's going on here, and I will keep fighting for you and try and fix some of it. I live in Birmingham, says Gurdeep, and see many people fraudulently claiming benefits, pretending to be disabled, using walking sticks they don't need, owning properties and businesses, using aliases to claim multiple benefits, and falsely claiming to be single parents. What's going on in this country? And why are the authorities so useless at seeing through some of this stuff? Absolutely extraordinary. Damon says this. Morning, Mike. Damon from Wigan. I spoke to a solicitor a few weeks ago about my divorce, and I asked about legal aid, to which I was told that it doesn't exist now and hasn't done for years. And after that, I rang 4 more solicitors, and I also told them that legal aid is not available and hasn't been around for years. What a joke. Have a great day. Yeah, I mean, apparently it's only available to you if you're an illegal migrant and you want to challenge the government and you want to challenge a decision that's already been made that says you can't stay here, you have to leave. You can't be a successful asylum seeker. You don't have a claim. Oh, no, don't worry. You can get some legal aid. We've got 60 million in the pot to pay a load of left-wing migrant lawyers. Human rights lawyers, no less. Let's get a voice note from Mick.
Morning, Mike. It's a very sunny, fantastic day in Staffordshire. Listen, Mike, Two-Tier will not do anything to stop the invasion of the UK by these economic migrants. He's got more in common with them than us. If you think about it, both of those, the migrants and Steer, are damaging our culture. Both of them are given free clothing. Both are given free housing. Neither of them pay for food, heating. They get driven around for free, travel everywhere for free, even by aeroplane. Both are protected at all costs by the law. Both are paid excessively using taxpayers' money. And most of all, both are not wanted by 90% of the UK's true patriotic citizens like myself.
Mick, thanks very much indeed. A shocking tale, isn't it? Absolutely ridiculous. Sharon says Macron needs to give the UK taxpayers back the 771 million that was given to France to stop the boats, which France is definitely not doing anything about. It just gets worse and worse. Why is Starmer bringing this man to the UK and entertaining him? Well, I don't know. And Steve says this, on drugs and drones. I served in Ukraine on counter-drone warfare. I could locate the drones, their manufacturer number, a breadcrumb trail if it's flight on a map, its home point and where the pilot was standing. Someone is clearly not on the ball. Yeah, well, you wouldn't expect anyone in a prison to be able to know all that stuff, but maybe you should go and work for them and tell them that's where the guy is, that's where the drugs are coming from, that's where the epicenter is of all this stuff. Can't be that difficult, can it? It's 8:22.
Journalists such as yourself at Talk and in other organisations can examine the people we are selecting. So there is
you
a
understand the frustration feel, though. Oh, God, there's another potential scandal again. He's denied any wrongdoing. We need to stress that.
I can more than understand it.
It can't be more than just Nigel Farage as a one-man band.
I feel it myself. I was there coming up on Saturday to do a Times Radio interview, you know, downstairs, and I thought, my goodness, I'm going to have to defend this now. Yeah. It's a perennial problem. Yeah, I feel it as well, and I can't stress enough how much of the limited resources Reform have are going into solving this problem.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back to Morning Glory. It's coming up to 8:26 in the morning. It's a beautiful looking day out there, certainly down here in the southeast of England. I don't know what it's like where you are, but summer is indeed upon us. It's Tuesday, July the 8th, well into the second week of Wimbledon. There'll be an awful lot of people enjoying the tennis, even as we speak. We'll talk a little bit about that later on. Rupert Bell's going to be here to defend his claim earlier last week that progress was what was needed at Wimbledon, and what was a good idea was actually to get rid of all the line judges. Well, it hasn't quite worked out as he would have expected unexpected, so I might have to pick him up on that. Let's get a voice note from Phil.
Morning, Mike. Phil from Peterborough. I hope there is an alert, and I hope it is the Russians coming, and I hope they do invade us and take over, because they'd certainly do a better job than this lot. Great show, buddy. Phil from Peterborough. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed. There goes the alert. Unfortunately, he's obviously just tongue-in-cheek there. We don't really want the Russians to invade. But yeah, they probably wouldn't be much worse of a government. The latest problem with this government, and Sam Carlisle's going to talk to us in a moment. She's a mum and a campaigner. She's written in The Sun this morning about mums and dads of children with special educational needs and disabilities. SEND is the word they normally use. The government will pay if it doesn't spend on SEND, is what the piece says. Basically, you know, the worry is that after last week's debacle over the welfare bill, where it seemed that the only people with a conscience were actually on the back benches of the Labour Party, the government got it completely wrong, got it completely round their ears. Instead of going after people who were wrongfully claiming benefits, they kind of started inferring they were going to just start cutting benefits willy-nilly across the board, which obviously the people in the back benches weren't going to handle. Now, this week, Bridget Phillipson has kind of refused to rule out the possibility that children with special educational needs and disabilities might also now be the victims of government cuts, and people are very alarmed about it. Sam, very good morning to you.
Good morning, Mike. How are you?
Yeah, very well. Thanks to you for talking to us this morning. It seems to be getting it all wrong, this government, doesn't it? Because, you know, while there might be a case to make about some people claiming benefits that they perhaps shouldn't be getting, there's no question that children who need these kinds of, you know, help packages because they've got special educational needs and they've got disabilities should not be targeted in this kind of way, should they?
No, they shouldn't. I mean, I would agree that the system needs reform, and I think a lot of parents would as well. At the moment, it's a really difficult system to navigate. It's really, really hard and causes a lot of stress to a lot of parents. So yes, reform the system. But what they're suggesting is taking away the legal rights for children and families, and the document that's written in. Well, there are rumours that they are doing this. One of their advisors said that, and they're refusing to rule that out. And that's not the answer to the problem here. The plans aren't the problem. So they're looking at it through the wrong end of the telescope, as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah. I mean, according to your piece today, these documents which have to be filled out, these EHCPs effectively, are quite complicated and quite difficult to do already. So, I mean, if they're going to start trying to somehow, you know, make people ineligible as a result of the examination of those documents, that's going to make people like your life harder, isn't it?
Yeah, so I have a daughter who's 23, and we're about to go from the education system. She's currently at a residential college. She has really severe disabilities, and without that EHCP, she wouldn't have been got that place. She wouldn't have the guaranteed support that she needs. So I think parents are really, really worried, and this covers a wide range of children. It could be autistic children, it could be children with who are deaf or blind, or it could be children like my daughter who has really complex needs. And that paperwork, it's a bit like saying there's a problem with the hospital system, so we're going to take away the notes that the consultant gives you at the end of a meeting or a consultation. That's really not the answer to solving the problem. It's just it's a really weird way to look at this. And it will take away the rights of families who really desperately need support. And it's and we're just asking for ordinary things. It's you know, you want your child to have the right education, you want them to have the right support in school, and to be able to make friends and to have a life. And that those documents write down the support that they need to achieve that. And I don't think your viewers would disagree with that at all.
No, I don't think they would. So what sorts of aid do you get? Is it just in terms of money, or is it other things? What is it?
So it could be like one-to-one, a teaching assistant in school. LV had that. It specifies the school that they need to go to. What the government wants to do is make mainstream more inclusive, and I don't think anyone would argue with that. So it's like, okay, make schools really capable of welcoming all different needs into classrooms. But that means you have to have teaching assistants.
Yeah.
That means kids need to walk into the classroom in the first place, or, you know, wheel in if they're in a wheelchair.
Right.
So they need to sort of change the buildings. What they need to do is make that happen first before taking away the rights. It's cart before horse if they do it.
Exactly right. Exactly right. And also everybody knows the state school system is under immense pressure, and for them to kind of make out, oh yeah, we can just do it in the state system because that'll be fine. You know, I mean, I saw Bridget Phillipson being interviewed at the weekend, and she was not even going to be drawn on the fact that their kind of ridiculous idea of taking you know, private schools and putting VAT on them hasn't been a success. And she was very, very clear that, oh no, it's not true to say that loads of schools have closed down. I mean, we know, and you'll know this, an awful lot of special needs education children have been going to private schools because that's the only place where they can get a proper kind of, you know, recognition and a proper sort of sense of help to get through their education. And an awful lot of those schools have now gone by the wayside because they can't afford to run on the new fees scale.
Yeah, so we need to get it right in state mainstream to avoid that happening, and to avoid. There's also a lot of unregulated schools that have been opening up, so that's an issue. But there is definitely room. My daughter goes to what is classed as an independent school, but it's actually a charity school.
Right.
So and that's been brilliant for her college.
Right.
I mean, that's been absolutely brilliant for her.
Right.
So. But in order to, we just need to get the first bits right first. So teaching assistants, for example, we know schools are letting them go. We know that teachers only get half an hour of training in SEND in their training. So, that needs to be sorted out.
Right.
There's also other areas, like when councils don't do this for families end up taking them to tribunal. That costs councils 100 million a year, and they lose 97% of cases. So that's ridiculous. So we do need to sort it out, but they need to do it properly.
Right.
They need to speak to families, and they need to speak to young people, and they need to speak to the organisations that work on the ground that can help them sort this out.
And are you confident that they'll do all those things, or are you not sure?
They're starting to do it. I would say they are starting to do it, but they really need to listen. It needs to be proper consultation with families. It needs to be meaningful, and they need to start telling us what the plans are. Because before they, the white paper or the law changes that they're bringing in won't happen till October. So in the meantime, families are left with this absolutely high levels of anxiety, and these are families that are. They want to spend their time looking after their children. They don't want to be fighting the system or worrying about government policy that might take away rights that their children should have.
No, sure. Sam, good to talk to you. Thanks very much indeed. Sam Carlyle there, writing in The Sun this morning why the government needs to be very, very careful about what it does with regard to children with special educational needs and disabilities. SEND. Is what they're known as, because there's rumoured to be cuts coming, thanks to Bridget Phillipson, who doesn't look as though she has much of a care in the world for anybody, if it's been the case that she's been told to save some money by Rachel Reeves. I mean, surely they must be able to find better ways of saving money than going after disabled children. That just doesn't seem right to me. The mobility scene is one of my pet hates, says Davey. Why shouldn't someone who earns more than £30,000 buy their own car like everyone else? They don't need a new car every 3 years, not to mention getting insurance and road tax paid. Here's an example. A person across the road from me about 2.5 years ago got a mobility car. It's only done about 100 miles because she hasn't passed her driving test. The other thing that gets me is that men get cars for their wives on PIP and then use them to go to work. I know. Well, this is the trouble. It's such an abused system. We're going to talk a little bit about the mobility system coming up a little bit later on. Right now, though, let's have a look at what's going on the Sun Letters page. It is, of course, the place to go to see what the nation is saying. You can say it to us, of course, as well, at 87222. It's all about the BBC today. Sid in Birmingham says, it seems the BBC is awash with cash. As Gary Lineker rides off into the sunset with his bags of licence payers' money, in comes new footy pundit Wayne Rooney on an £800,000 contract. It's certainly Wayne's world, with the missus raking in millions and Wayne topping up his already bulging bank account. The Rooneys really do know how to turn a shilling. And Rita, who's in County Down, says, when will the BBC stop paying pundits like Wayne Rooney extortionate amounts of licence payers' money? I don't doubt he knows a thing or two about football, but paying him that sort of money is a disgrace. The corporation just keeps throwing cash away like it's monopoly money, fleecing licence fee payers time and time again. Well, of course they do, because it's not their money. Same as government initiatives. The government doesn't understand money because they don't ever have to earn it. Nobody in politics understands it because they've never had to earn it. All of them, practically most of them anyway, have only ever worked in public sector jobs. And so they've never had to run a business. There's nobody in government that's ever run a business. Seems incredible, doesn't it? Let's get a voice note from Darren.
Morning, Mike. Darren from Suffolk. Great show as ever. Look, this situation with the migrants, I said it years ago. If you basically agree on a number that are coming across, say 30,000, and then have a processing centre in Calais, only people get across if you've got passports or ID. Anyone else that goes across on a boat gets turned back, and the people are allowed to bring them back to the coast. It's not rocket science, is it? I mean, that's what they should do, rather than this one-in, one-out nonsense. Everyone goes back, it stops in a week, you don't have to take them back anymore, and then you just agree on an allocation. I mean, come on. It's ridiculous.
It is ridiculous. It's out of control. And that is the problem. Morning, Mike. Am I right in thinking that the government have been giving the migrant rights lawyers millions of our money and are increasing that amount by 30%? So we pay them to take us to court for their human rights. That pigging alarm is going off in my head right now, says Carol in Merseyside. I don't blame you. You know, it's the alarm for the idiocy of this government. It should be going off every 3 seconds. It's 8:37.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back to Morning Glory. It's 8:39. I'm Mike Graham with you all the way through, of course, until 10 o'clock. Rest in peace, Lord Norman Tebbit, the best Prime Minister we never had, says John from Wapping on the breaking news that Norman Tebbit, one of Margaret Thatcher's most loyal supporters during her years of power, has died at the age of 94. Let's get a voice note from Leslie on wealth tax.
Morning, Mike. Leslie from Cornwall. Someone once said, you don't make the poor richer by making the rich poorer. Wise man that, Mr. Churchill. Thanks, Mike.
Leslie, thank you very much indeed. It's true, isn't it? I mean, unfortunately, this Labour government seems to think that by making people poorer and certainly by treating people less fairly, it's going to make everybody else feel as if they've been treated more fairly. But it doesn't seem to be working. Anne McElvoy is here, Politico, her co-host Politics at Sam and Anne's podcast as well. Anne, very good morning to you.
Morning.
I don't know quite what the plan is here. I'm trying to to convince myself what it is that the government's fiscal policy is. It's not very clear, is it? You know, one minute they want to come after people on welfare, and the next minute they've reversed that. One minute they're going after pensioners, next minute they've reversed that. You know, next minute they're saying they might be putting a wealth tax on, but they're not sure, haven't decided yet. You know, it's all a bit sort of incomprehensible. I don't know if I'm just being stupid, am I?
Would never say that, Mike. Tempting. But no, if you remember the old joke about the bank robbers asked by the judge why he robs banks, he says, well, that's where the money is.
Right.
I think there's, you know, in everything that you've laid out there are certainly cases, including the cases you were just talking about there, you know, just listening in the columnist in the Sun about the SEND special needs and whether it's fair or not to kind of raid those budgets. But we definitely have seen massive spikes in budgets, everything to do with claims, benefits, etc. Now, a lot of them are certainly justified, and some of them you could argue if you did the system a bit differently and scaled up things that worked but didn't like replicate things that didn't work so well. The Motability Scheme is a good example. You could save some money, and I think we all do want the government to save money. You know, we know public finances are very strained. We have one of the biggest debt ratios that we borrow relatively an awful lot that we then have to service the interest payments. So I think that's partly where this comes from. Now, the wealth tax is a really difficult one because Labour implicitly came in saying we're not going to do what old Labour wanted to do, which is just take more and more money from a small group of people, the wealthy, in other words. And also, what you call wealthy is a little bit shady, isn't it? I mean, do you mean like the non-doms where they sort of misstep because then they did try to impose a taxation there or had a plan to, and so many non-doms left the country? They simply said, look, if you're coming after our estates and our planning, which is very complex, they have ways to do it that most of us don't have. It just didn't work. So then you start to say, well, okay, well, let's get hold of some money from people who are here, who earn well. And I think that's probably where the squeeze is going to come. It will be called a wealth tax because most people say, well, I don't care about the wealthy. But maybe if they think about, you know, their own or their family's aspirations, they care more when they see that it actually can hit people who are maybe on, you know, you take sort of 90,000 and up is not the same as earning 2 million, is it? You know, it's a big difference.
And certainly for people living in London, and people will be gnashing their teeth at the sound of this when I say it, but people who are making 90,000, say, as a couple in London, are not wealthy. You know, because, you know, they may even have a house that's worth over £1 million, or it may be worth £2 million, but they're still not wealthy, and it's kind of an inverse weirdness that we've been suffering from over the course of the last few years.
Yeah, I mean, one way you could go at it is by raising council tax on properties, because then you would tax the value of the property. And that is kind of a bit more complex, as you have to go then through local governments and you've got another bid of the machine. Right. I think that's probably fair. Or land taxes, I think it's absolutely fair. You know, a lot of people are very good at acquiring land, using it then as a store of value. I think you could go after that. The problem was when they tried to do it then through inheritance tax, you could see why people got quite angry about that. And certainly it also hit a lot of farming communities. So, you know, I think there's going to be some kind of raid. The question is, what's the fairest way to get it without treating it? Well, the reason I don't like the phrase wealth tax is that I'm not really about defending the interests of the wealthy. Well, I know many people are struggling so much, but it's just that a lot of people are not really wealthy in the sense that suggests they're doing pretty well. You can take some taxation from them, but the idea that they're like this neo-cynics, you know, idea that there was some sort of place that you could just go to get lots of money, and also you've got to assume, you know, that money comes in, that people don't leave the workforce. Because if you're getting that money through work and you're at a certain point in your career, you're like, well, okay, if you're going to tax me, why do I work that fifth day or that weekend? You know, what's the point? Yeah. So I think they have to be quite careful with that curve.
Because we saw that with doctors, didn't we? A lot of doctors who said we're not going to work any more than we do because they've put so much extra tax on our pension pot that it's literally not worth working.
Not worth it.
So a lot of them went down to doing a 3-day week, which has then had an impact on the NHS and the way that it runs. And again, you know, when you look at the fairness aspect that a lot of people are mentioning to me now, a lot of people that I take calls from talk about it's just not fair. And they don't just mean the welfare bill and the people who are claiming welfare who shouldn't be getting it. They also talk an awful lot about the illegal migrants and the migration problem in general, the amount of money that it's costing the government, you know, and they say they have to find money from somewhere. And everybody says, well, why don't you find some money there? Why don't you just stop paying for all these people to come into the country and be put up pretty much for the rest of their lives?
Sure, but I mean, you've still got people who come into the country who, once they're here, have to be dealt with, have to be housed. Now, you can argue about how that should be done, and I know you often do on your show. But I think you've got to, I worry a bit about trying to solve a really bigger problem, which is just about growth, about the sluggishness of the economy, sometimes our lack of motivation bits of the employment law that Angela Rayner is very proud of, some aspects of it, they seem like good things to do in terms of giving people some more rights, for instance, to those who are bereaved when they've lost pregnancies. But somehow the messaging doesn't seem to be about, let's get to work, let's create more value. It's a bit more about, so I suppose it's just a change of emphasis. I understand why people are annoyed when they see irregular migration, and it does have a cost. It's just that you could, even if you stopped it at zero now, because I would devoutly love to bring down the number of boats, you will still obviously have the cost of dealing with people who've come in and how to deal with that.
But what I'm saying
I suppose I'm saying is you do need also to stimulate the economy. You can't just make the savings, if you like, by bearing down on problems that already exist.
No, but that's what I'm saying. But they can't also just keep saying we need to make savings while at the same time spending billions of pounds on something that they don't appear to be doing anything about. Regardless of what it is, it happens to be, migrant hotels or migrant housing. It happens to be, benefits for people. But what I'm saying is they can't continue to say we can't afford to do X when they don't address why.
Well, they say they're trying to address why. That's why we've got President Macron in full flummery today to try to do something and come to one of those complex deals that you can only really do by getting buy-in from France. Now, you may not like that, but it's the case, right? I mean, you have the Channel, and on the other side, history has determined there be the French. So I think they are trying to do it. They did come in saying they would deal better with the asylum system. I think, like all things that Labour promised coming in, that has turned out to be, as Yvette Cooper, they're nodding in agreement with me, that's turned out to be rather, I was going to say, I only really said that to trigger Mike. That there is that sense that these things that they said, we'll come in and do this, the Tories are hopeless, Rwanda scheme failed, only to find that they've got many of the same problems, many of the same drivers, and actually they would love to look at a third processing offshore. Now, Rwanda was not a good idea, but the idea to do something that was more radical probably was a good idea. And I sense with this government, it sometimes just takes a bit longer to get to a position which, it looks not dissimilar to the one that they denounced in opposition, which is that you do need to tackle this at root. And that I do agree with you.
Yes, absolutely right. Finally, any thoughts on Norman Tebbit? He's passed away today at the age of 94. He was one of those titans of the political world. I don't know if you ever had any dealings with him.
I did. I knew Norman Tebbit reasonably well. Certainly in the earlier part of my career, he was very, very supportive to young journalists, and he had that reputation, didn't he, being a bit of a Rottweiler. But he could be incredibly kind. And I remember convening some dinner, and this was about a kind of arcane argument these days, but it was about, whether Britain should go into join the European currency. And I brought together, I was really quite proud of myself, brought together these sort of pros and cons at a dinner at the Spectator where I then worked. And it was a bit testy, opinions running high. It was under the Blair government. A lot of people have forgotten it now, wanted to be in the single currency. And Norman Tebbit was there, obviously speaking on the other side strongly. And he could not have been more inclusive and more kind of rounded in the conversation to people who didn't agree with him. And I remember, I probably won't publicly shame them, because we were like, Norman Tebbit for Labour was absolutely a boo figure at the time.
Right.
A cabinet minister, later cabinet minister, a couple of people said to me, Norman Tebbit just, my God, I had no idea what a nice, and he could be very tart and he could be very acerbic, but he had that real culture of debate. That I was a bit like, this is going to go a bit wrong and everybody's going to hate this evening. And it was partly due to him. He really did believe in debating with those against him. Publicly, he could tear them down. Privately, he would sit around a table, listen to every word, and particularly the younger Labour and Lib Dem politicians, I think, went away with a completely different view of so, rest in peace, Norman Tebbit.
Absolutely. Good to talk to you. Anne McAvoy, thank you very much indeed, Politico co-host and the Politics at Sam and Anne's podcast as well. Let's get a voice note from Judith on taxes.
Good morning, Mark. It's Judy from Altoffs, West Yorkshire. Have you noticed that the government has plenty of money to give away? But when it comes to people in this country, we've got to tighten our belts and have our taxes increased. I mean, they're giving millions to Starmer's mates, solicitor mates, for helping illegal immigrants, giving millions to Syria. We even give money to Afghanistan. I don't know. You should look after your own first, not everybody else. Thank you.
Thank you, Judith. Common sense, as ever, personified. Of course, you've got to look after your own. What's wrong with them? Why can't they see that? The unfairness is going to kill them in the end. It's going to bury them. They're going to be finished, and they're not coming back. 10 minutes to 9.
So the overly monitoring and legalising the relationships between people in the workplace because of things that people say. And they will say, Angela Rayner and this government, well, it's not really about free speech, it's explicitly about harassment. But of course, when you start saying a woman is a woman, or you believe in other things and you say those things, people then say, well, words are violence and that's distressing and harmful and that's harassment.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back to Morning Glory, 8.53, 8.54 actually is the time, getting up there to nearly 9 o'clock. Morning, Mike. When are the government going to realise the only way to stop and deter the boats is to declare a national security emergency and deploy the Army and Navy to stop the boats? It's the only solution. That's from Ryan. Lots more of you got lots to say about the boats problem, but also, of course, many of you had plenty to say about the reactions yesterday to 7/7, particularly from the King and for some of the other sort of public speakers who are dead scared of ever mentioning the M word, right? And the M word, of course, is Muslim. Let's talk to Andrew Gilligan now, Senior Fellow at the Policy Exchange and author of a report into an organisation called the Centre for Media Monitoring, which, of course, is a part of the Muslim Council of Britain. Andrew, very good morning to you.
Morning.
We seem to still have a kind of fear of Islam, which some people might call Islamophobia, but it's not the way that they think it is. This is the way that people in public don't want to mention it. King Charles yesterday talking about, you know, we mustn't let people divide us in the nation. You know, Keir Starmer, we must not let the divisive people win. You know, not one mention of the fact that we actually were blown up by some pretty nasty people who happen to be Muslims.
That's right. I remember a press conference given by Brian Paddock, who was I think the deputy commissioner or something at the time on the day.
Yeah.
And his first line, more or less, was, you know, we've got to stop people, you know, we've got to make sure the Muslim population is safe. And of course, that's right. But at the same time, I remember a lot of people thinking, hold on, what about, you know, the people that were attacked?
What about the rest of us? Yeah.
What about them being safe? And I think, so this body I've written about this morning, the Centre for Media Monitoring, is one of the reasons actually that people in authority are a bit frightened of talking about this, because part of its job is to basically attack people for Islamophobia, for saying perfectly true and reasonable and sensible things about Islamism, about the terror threat that faces us. So, for instance, they say the British media is routinely Islamophobic, and 60% of articles about Muslims are negative. And actually, it turns out that they count sort of accurate factual accounts of terror attacks in that 60%. And the top three offenders, they call it, are the three main international news wires like Reuters, AP, and the AFP, which are basically about as far from the stereotype of, like, you know, horrible right-wing tabloids as you could get. And it's that level of name calling and intimidation that these guys that these guys have succeeded to some extent in cowing the political debate about.
Yeah, because they're basically all about trying to stop people from saying things, aren't they? And from sort of preventing free speech. They want to impose what they call appropriate limits to free speech, which is not free speech, is it?
That's the people behind the Islamophobia definition, and the old Party parliamentary group of British Muslims, and these guys also support that definition. And you know, if that happened, and I think it's very likely to happen because the government's working one up at the moment, then if that happens, that's a pretty dangerous weapon, a new weapon in the hands of these folk. Because, you know, they're basically, their view is basically that the media shouldn't be allowed to say anything negative about Muslims.
Yeah, or anything that they don't like, effectively, as well, right?
That's right. I mean, you know, even if it is like this was an Islamist terror attack, that in their book counts as bias and Islamophobia, and that's the danger of it, and all sorts of they've got a glossary on their website which contains amazingly kind of loaded and slanted interpretations of common terms. That said, you shouldn't use the word Islamist at all. You shouldn't use the word Muslim extremist because it's Islamophobic. And I think that's the kind of thing we're up against here. And at the moment, so they've got a bit of power. You know, they've got some. They've had meetings with people at the BBC. People at the BBC have come to speak at their events. People in the press have as well. They've done a bit of training for journalists by the looks of it. They've got some power, but they've been handed a great deal more power by this new Islamophobia definition.
Right. And they've actually sent us a statement, believe it or not, which kind of confirms everything you're saying, which basically says this. This report is nothing but a politically motivated hit job, riddled with inaccuracies, distortions and smears. It comes from an organisation that has long sought to influence our media into negatively framing British Muslims. So there you have it.
I was quite pleased with that statement, to be honest. It's so barking. It makes them, it kind of proves a point, like you said.
Right.
Actually, one of the other things they did, amazingly seedy thing to do, I thought, was last night, or sometime yesterday, after the report had already been sent round to kind of journalists as an advance copy, they changed their website to claim that they weren't any longer part of the Muslim Council of Britain. But unfortunately, they only changed one page and they forgot to change all the others,
right.
Including their Twitter feed. And I just, that signifies their kind of bad faith and their ineptitude as well, actually.
Yeah, absolutely right. So, I mean, it's a stalemate, effectively, isn't it? I mean, they'll continue to row about you and complain about you, and you'll continue to point out what you're pointing out, and then we'll end up sort of just going round and round in circles, presumably.
Well, I think we've got the facts on our side. I mean, obviously, our report's not a political hit job. It's a very measured, considered assemblage of all the evidence. It's got, the vast majority of what it says is based on things they've said themselves, and there are footnotes in every case to their own documents. So I invite anyone to compare us and them, and I think we come out all right.
Okay. Andrew, good to talk to you. Thanks very much indeed. Andrew Gilligan there. I'm Mike Graham. Coming back after the... Good evening and welcome to Plank of the Week. It's the one show where you do not have to be worried about judgmental people because we'll do all the judging for you. Let's just have a look at how Humphrey Useless is now spending his time.
There goes your career, mate.
Over there a bit is over towards where all the migrants come in. He's jumping there. There he goes. He goes over the bar.
Hello,
and
lady.
Unfortunately, it catches on his Johnson.
If he's plank of the week, he's got a sizable plank.
That's a whole different show.
Plank of the Week, Fridays at 7 on Talk.
Hi, I'm Kevin O'Sullivan, and I've got a message for you. Welcome back to this blockbuster edition of What Just Happened. It really is a good one, I think. It's so funny that people keep calling me Meghan Markle.
across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back to Morning Glory, coming up to 3 minutes past 9. It is, of course, Tuesday, the 8th of July. The breaking news this morning, Norman Tebbit, one of Margaret Thatcher's most loyal supporters during her years of power, has died at the age of 94. We just heard Anne McElvoy there talking about what an unusually pleasant man he was, even though he had the kind of reputation for being a bit of a Rottweiler. He was known as a skinhead, a bit of an enforcer for Margaret Thatcher, famous for telling people to get on their bike if they couldn't find a job where they lived, and they should actually just go out and find jobs and work for themselves. They shouldn't expect the state to prop them up. We've got a very different situation going on this morning. People arguing about special needs children, children with disabilities, not wanting to have their money taken away from them by this Labour government, who doesn't seem to know the difference between people who need help and people who shouldn't be getting it. As I said to Anne McElvoy, you know, you can't have a government which on the one hand claims that they haven't got enough money to give benefits to the disabled and the people who are young and who need it, where they can actually give benefits to people coming into this country from overseas, people coming into this country with their family members who need to be all looked after by the welfare state. It simply doesn't add up, and it won't add up, and it will continue to be a massive problem. Front page is filled today with a lot of different stories. Emmanuel Macron here, the president of France, of course, hand back our £771 million is what it says on the front page of the Daily Mail. The summit gets underway today, of course. The King has announced that there should be no borders between us in terms of France and Britain, because we are both basically heading in the same direction. Is he a Europhile? Is he a man that wants us to rejoin the European Union? A lot of people not happy about that. Also, 50,000 children, according to the newspaper, have been lifted out of poverty as a result of the U-turn that was made last week with the welfare bill and the Labour government. Also, front page of The Sun, Air Miles Andy cleared by the FBI. Apparently he can get back on his planes and start flying around the world again because the FBI have basically cleared him in the case against him with Jeffrey Epstein. Cleared for takeoff is what it says. We'll talk about that with our royal correspondent Rupert Bell, who will also be reminded of what he said about progress at Wimbledon last week when, of course, the line judges were removed and replaced by artificial intelligence, which turns out not to be that intelligent after all. 0344 499 1000 is the number. Lots of you have got plenty to say about the disability problems, about the welfare bills as well, people who are claiming for things that they shouldn't be claiming for. Apparently constipation will now get you a free car, as will tennis elbow. What on earth is going on? Also, there's a risk of holiday chaos coming up over the summer months. We're nearly there already, because there's changes being made to how many liquids you can take onto a flight and what size of a bottle you can take onto a flight. We'll bring you up to date with all of that, of course, as well. 0344 499 1000. Also, there might be a patch available to stop you from getting so drunk you get a hangover. The patch will tell you when to stop drinking, as somebody pointed out, a bit like having a mother-in-law. 6 minutes past 9, I'm Mike Graham. This, of course, is Morning Glory. Let's get it on. Alan's in Middlesbrough. He says, I did some supply teaching at a local school in Middlesbrough. After spending 35 years in the oil and gas industry, I was astonished by the unruly behaviour being tolerated and how many kids had SEN letters after their name in the class register. More than 50% had some special educational needs. It makes sense when you realise rubbish, unscrupulous parents receive benefits from conditions such as ADHD. It is now a racket. I think there is definitely a perception now that there's more people claiming benefits than there's ever been in the history of benefit claimants, and I think that can't be a good thing. My daughter is a primary school teacher, says Sue, with nearly 20 years experience. Her current school struggles with SEN children. They have an SEN unit with special teachers, but they are overwhelmed by the sheer number of SEN pupils now. They do their best, but then the children are then returned to the mainstream classroom where they are very disruptive to the rest of the class. Both my daughter and her teaching assistant struggle to cope with the more challenging SEN pupils, says Sue in West Sussex. Fascinating. We learn so much when we do this show because you tell us the things that are going on in your world, and we want you to keep doing that, of course, because we here are here for your delectation. So if you have a story for us, we can give you an email address, which I think is tips@talk.tv. If you have a story, you just get in touch with us, you send it to us. You are our eyes and our ears on Britain's streets. Coming up, we're going to talk to Dan Hodges. First up, though, Richard Fuller is here, Shadow Chief Secretary to the Treasury. Richard, very good morning to you.
Good morning, Mike.
There's clearly a problem in this country, it seems, that we're discovering. I mean, I suppose we all kind of knew, but maybe we didn't know the extent of it. You know, the people that are being qualifying for, as you just heard, those two messages that I read out there, special educational needs, people who are qualifying for help, people who are qualifying for benefits. There seems to be no end to the qualification process that people can somehow claim. We've heard, you know, tennis elbow gets you a free car, constipation gets you a free car. You know, what constitutes special educational needs? It seems to me it needs an overhaul, doesn't it?
Well, I think we started the overhaul 10 years ago, a new process trying to make sure that we met the needs of children who really did need additional help under the last government. But we have seen an explosion in the number of people calling for these EHCPs, these special programs, and a large part of that, as your analysis has been showing, has been for children with autism, but also children with social and emotional needs. And whilst we do want to make sure that there is care and support for those children who really need it, we have to make sure that we're not just using this approach as a sort of a sideline effort for people to claim additional support and benefits where traditional schooling would be able to meet their needs perfectly adequately.
Well, that's the problem, isn't it? Because there isn't, unfortunately, a never-ending pot of money, as the Labour government are finding out. But they're being very disingenuous, I think, because they're saying, on the one hand, we need to make savings, but on the other hand, they're spending money like a drunken sailor on all sorts of other things.
Well, that gets to the heart of it, Mike. I mean, who is in charge of the fiscal policy of this Labour government? Is it the Prime Minister and his wounded Chancellor who's had to do U-turn after U-turn, or is it being written by the left-wing backbenchers of the Labour Party? We saw last week that it was the left-wing backbenchers of the Labour Party that were in charge, and the Prime Minister was too weak to be able to push through what he'd originally proposed just a day previously. And now on special education needs, we have the left wing of the Labour Party calling for even more money to be spent, rather than the rigorous assessment of whether the changes that were put in place 10 years ago are working, and if they need changing because somehow monies are going to students that perhaps don't need that money and are missing students who really do need that extra help.
Yeah, and that's the thing. The system isn't very efficient, and for some reason in this country, and I have to say, you know, many of the last few years were the Tories in charge, nothing seems to work very well. You know, whether it's the trains, whether it's the you know, the buses, whether it's the roads, whether it's civil servants, whether it's local councils. You know, there's a great dearth of people who seem to know what they're doing in this country.
Yeah, look, I mean, I'm reflecting on that period too, Mike, and you know, one of the problems is that we've asked government to do too much. We ask the government to intervene whenever there is a problem, as though there's some magician behind a curtain in British politics that somehow has all the answers to the problems. That isn't the truth. In the end, it's you and your family that are the bedrock of society. It's the work that you do in going to work every day, or in the small business that you run, that creates the wealth or the income, that creates the taxes that can be spent. But ultimately, we need to look at the future of the state in a far more defined and effective way, and that's the work that Kemi Badenoch has embarked on. She's asked me to look at the role of public spending in that, and there are better ways that we can deliver the services that the public want. Some of those, to be fair to the Labour government, they will look at some of those, particularly in the health service, and we'll support them when they come up with good ideas, particularly harnessing new technologies. But we need a fundamental rethink that stops people thinking that the government is the answer to all their problems, and that other people are going to pay for that, because in the end, it's you that ends up paying.
Yeah, I know, and the government and the state, as far as I'm concerned, is far too big. But part of the reason that it got too big was when COVID happened, you know, the government sort of took control. They didn't offer us the question of whether it was a good idea to lock down. They just said, we're going to do it. And so that's where I think a lot of this comes from, because an awful lot of people think, OK, well, we'll just do what the government tells us. And, you know, that was clearly wrong.
Yeah, I think you're right, and Mike, the first time I appeared on your show, I thanked you a bit through that period, because you were a clear voice about that there were alternatives. The government chose its path, but it's clearly had a profound impact on people's expectations about what the state can do, profound impact on the sense of personal self-reliance, and that's the work now we in the Conservative Party are embarking on, so that we can get the state right-sized, so it's focused on things it can do well, and make sure it does those things to a much higher standard.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. Well, let's hope it happens. A few words about Norman Tebbit. Sad day today, dies at the age of 94. Did you know Norman?
I had an yes, I did. He was party chairman when I was, for my sins, chairman of the National Young Conservatives, and Norman Tebbit got the Federation of Conservative Students, which were an unruly mob, closed down, which I was very pleased of. But well, no doubt we got. Oh, sorry about that, Mike. But more importantly for British politics was I was at the Grand Hotel the night before, or the night of the bomb. Actually, left it before 10, just about 10 o'clock, and woke up the next morning to the searing image of the collapse of the Grand Hotel and Norman Tebbit being pulled out, and his wife Margaret as well. And those images seared themselves into my memory. The horrendous activity of terrorism, in that instance by the IRA, and the tremendous bravery of people at the Grand Hotel, and of course Prime Minister Margaret Thatcher, who then went on and said conference will carry on, and gave her speech almost as if nothing had happened, but obviously with a great consideration for the people who died, and obviously for Norman Tebbit. He was a figure for his age. He and I on politics probably wouldn't have agreed on everything, but he was clear of purpose and spoke directly about what he thought was in the best interests of working people, and that clarity of thought and that courage in expressing it, I think, is missed in British politics.
Yeah, I think so. He will be missed. Thank you very much indeed. Richard Fuller, MP, Shadow Chief Secretary to the Treasury. We'll find that picture as well, because if you haven't seen it, I think it really does sum up how incredible a man Norman Tebbit was, and as I say, his wife, who suffered terrible injuries in the in that bombing, and was basically paralysed for the rest of her life. This from somebody who doesn't give a name. My wife works in benefits for our local council, as I also work for them. More stories to follow. She quite often gets phone calls from people on £3,000 a month moaning that their benefits have changed. She then explains that they get more than her wages, and they report her for being rude. I get so angry. How can this be allowed? Benefits are better than wages. Well, that is the problem, and so you can't really blame people for not getting a job if the benefits situation that they're on is going to give them more money. Mike, didn't Starmer say they were ready for government and they had a plan and every department knew what to do? It sounds like Boris when he said he had an oven-ready deal for Brexit. All lies. Well, there is a problem, isn't there? Let's get a quick voice note from David on Keir Starmer.
Morning, Mike. David from Derby. Apologies for the rant yesterday when I rang in, saying sort it, Starmer. I thought I'd just check in and check if he's sorted it, and no, he's not sorted it yet.
No,
Have a good day, Mike.
David, I'm afraid he hasn't sorted it yet. Let's talk to Dan Hodges, commentator for the Mail on Sunday. It's been another funny week, and it's only Tuesday. Dan, very good morning to you.
Morning.
I mean, I'm sort of becoming more and more confused, I think. I said I was a bit confused last week. I think I'll be more confused this week. I don't know what this government is doing. I don't know what their policies are. I don't know what their aims are. I don't know what they're, you know, from which point they're sitting, where they're trying to get to. I mean, can you help me out here? I don't know what they're doing.
Well, I mean, I share your confusion, but I think that there's a reason for your confusion and my confusion, everyone else's confusion, is that you have to realise we are seeing something quite unique that I personally have never seen in British politics before, which is we now have a Prime Minister and a Chancellor and a government that is literally saying to the country, we're very sorry, but we can't govern the country anymore. And the governance of the country is now going to be left to our own backbench Labour MPs. I mean, if you look at the briefing...
Well, that's what it looks like to me.
I mean, it's not what it looks like. It's literally what it is. I mean, I have never seen anything like the briefing I saw over the weekend, in which we saw this new line. I mean, I cannot understand who came up with this line in government. Someone in Downing Street came up with this line, and they were running around over the weekend briefing it, that Keir Starmer and Rachel Reeves were now going to make Labour MPs own, this was their words, own their decision over welfare and over benefits and the benefits vote. and to turn round and then tell the country everything that happens moving forward in relation to increasing taxes, in relation to benefits policy, in relation to other governments' policy, is literally now being done as a reaction to what Labour MPs did last week. And that it is now Labour MPs who are dictating taxation policy, welfare policy, and the other policies from government. Now, that is literally the government's line.
Yeah.
That's literally the line that's coming out from Downing Street. We didn't want to do what we did last week. Labour MPs did what they wanted to do last week. As a result of that, we are going to have to break our pledges on taxation. We're going to have to break our pledge to reform the welfare system. We're going to have to throw out the window other policies that they were supposed to be implementing. Remember, we were being told they were suddenly going to change policy in relation to the two-child benefit cap. Yeah. You may agree with that or disagree with that, but we're now being told we're not going to do that anymore.
Yeah, I don't know what they're doing on that. I mean, your guess is literally as good as mine on the two-child benefit. I've completely lost the plot.
But do you see what I mean? I mean, have you ever seen a government and a prime minister say, I cannot govern the country because my backbenchers won't let me?
Yeah.
I'm going to have to rate, literally saying, I am now going to have to break my pledge on taxation. My Chancellor is going to have to break her pledge on taxation because we're being forced to by Labour MPs. I mean, the only equivalent I can remember is obviously when Theresa May obviously was in the midst of a series of Brexit votes when the House of Commons just would not let her move forward.
Right.
But we all remember how that ended up. And again, this is a prime minister and a government that has a 117 majority.
Right.
I mean, it's just it's staggering. I don't know what they think they're. I literally don't know what they think they're doing.
No.
I mean, I don't think they know what they're doing.
Well, I'll tell you what. I've been summing up the way the government's currently running with this clip of Pat McFadden talking about the alert test that's coming on the 7th of September. Because if you can make any head nor tail of this as well, you're a better man than I am. Check it out.
So we tell the public well in advance that the test is coming, so everyone knows the date and the time. And when it comes to vulnerable groups, for example, potential victims of domestic violence, we have specific communication with charities in that field, and there is advice on the government alert website for people to opt out of the test if they want to. We don't want people to opt out, but we understand there might be circumstances where the people are particularly vulnerable where they'll choose to do so.
Do you think he asked to be the guy that delivered that message? I'm going, I'm sorry, there's quite a lot of things going on in the world at the moment. I'm not sure an emergency test of an alarm, which may or may not be of any use to anyone, is going to be worthwhile.
Look, I don't mind it. I don't mind how, you know, we live in a dangerous world. There may be occasions.
Yeah, but would you trust them to send a message out at the right time?
Yeah, I mean, but I mean, the key thing about this, you know, I don't mind that. The question I would have, though, I mean, you've touched on it, is why now, right? Why be doing something like this now?
Exactly.
Right.
That's kind of my point. You know,
you are already giving the country the impression you just are not gripping the basics. You are not engaging with the basics. You're not engaging with the country's priorities. Just park this sort of stuff for a while. Just park it for a few weeks or months. Just give the country the impression you actually have some idea of how to get a grip of government and of power.
Yeah.
No one is interested in this sort of stuff.
No, listen, I'm getting every single day.
Boris issues.
Yeah, every single day, Dan, I'm getting more calls from people, and more voice notes, more messages, more tweets from people who are talking about the word fairness all the time. All the time, the word fairness is what's coming up. I see occasional tweets from Keir Starmer talking about, you know, how he's going to make Britain fair. You know, people deserve a fair, fair day's pay for a fair day's work and all that. But people in Britain feel that not being treated fairly. They feel that the country is being, overrun by the illegal migrant problem and much else besides, and by criminals, by benefit scroungers. They feel that they're working, and the people who are working, they're nuts off, frankly, are not getting a fair crack of the whip. They're getting taxed up the wazoo, everything's going up in price, and they see and they look around and they see loads of people getting stuff for nothing, and they're not happy about it.
But again, it comes back to the point we were saying. I completely understand why people think that. But again, where is our government on this? I mean, let's take the issue of fundamental fairness. A week ago, we were being told by the Prime Minister and his Chancellor and his Welfare Secretary that fairness was absolutely fundamental to the benefit system, was pushing through these welfare reforms. Right? We were being told it wasn't about money, it was about fairness, it was about morality. It had to be done because, in Keir Starmer's view, it was the right thing.
Yeah.
We're now being told by exactly the same people it wasn't that wasn't fair after all. That's why they started negotiating with the Labour rebels. They realised they'd got it wrong, and as a result of that, what was fair a week ago is different this week.
Yeah.
Then, having done that, having spent a couple of days doing that, they're now turning around and saying, actually, we don't think that was fair after all. We thought what we were doing originally was fair. And as a result of that, we're going to have to make other decisions now that we also think aren't fair. So we're going to have to raise taxes, even though we didn't think that was fair. We're going to have to scrap other welfare reforms, even though we thought they were fair. I mean,
it's amazing, isn't it? I mean, believe it or not.
I don't quite know what we're all supposed to do and say about the government at the moment.
No.
I mean, I get criticised every week, with people saying to me, "Oh, you used to support Keir Starmer. You used to be, now why you slag him off?" Because the point is, Keir Starmer can't even support himself.
No. Well, there's nothing to support,
he's telling us all one day, this is absolutely fundamental, this is absolutely fair, this is absolutely a core belief of mine.
Yeah.
And then he turns around the next day and says, do you know, I mean, literally said a week and a half ago, oh yeah, all that stuff I was saying about immigration, didn't really mean it.
No.
Didn't really mean it. Somebody else put it in my speech.
Yeah, I didn't read it first.
Properly.
It's just extraordinary. And I mean, he doesn't believe in anything. He actually said the words the other day. He was speaking and he did one of these, Q&As somewhere. And he talked about how, he believed in, helping working people to get on in life. And then he said, I literally don't believe in anything else. And I don't know whether it was clumsy language, but he actually said, I don't believe in anything else.
Do you remember when he initially did that Island of Strangers?
Yeah, we've been playing the clip.
And remember, was it when he was attacked
in
the House of Commons by the leader of the Welsh Nats at Prime Minister's Questions, and turned round with absolute indignation, absolute fury and indignation when she dared to say, you don't really believe this, do you?
Right.
There's nothing you can't hold a position for a week that you actually believe. Turned around with absolute indignation to her, and then a few weeks later turned around and said, "Yeah, she's right. I didn't mean it."
Wasn't she the Plaid Cymru woman that he had to apologise to because he was so rude to her?
Exactly.
Because he can't take any criticism at all. And also, we watched that.
House of Commons.
Yeah, we watched that clip very carefully because when he denied, wanting to have said it. He said it with a lot of conviction. That was not a man who was reading off a script. That was a guy who was saying something that he clearly believed in. And if he's not, he's a very good actor, which I never thought I would say, because he doesn't appear to be very good at public speaking. But it was one of his better speeches, actually. It looked like he actually knew what he was talking about, and he looked like he was in full command of what he was saying. So for him to then say it was like the first time I read it, I'm not sure I buy that anyway.
Well, exactly. But the point is, if the Prime Minister is not himself, frankly does not believe himself what he is saying to the country, if he doesn't believe himself the policies he's putting before the country,
right?
How can he expect anybody else to believe in what he's saying or support his agenda?
I know. It's quite remarkable. We've actually got, this team I've got here is so good, Dan. They've actually dug out the Liz Saville Roberts clip when she put that question from her party at Plaid Cymru to Starmer. Have a look.
This Prime Minister once spoke of compassion and dignity for migrants and for defending free movement. Now he talks of islands of strangers and taking back control. Somebody here has to call this out, Mr. Speaker. It seems the only principle he consistently defends is whichever he last heard in a focus group. So I ask him, is there any belief he holds which survives a week in Downing Street?
Yes, the belief that she talks rubbish.
Yeah, see, that was very much below the belt, and he later apologised for it, right?
But there's a couple of things. Firstly, just as an aside, there's Rachel Reeves having hysterics on the front bench, thinking it's the funniest thing she's ever heard.
Yeah.
Put that to one side.
Yeah.
What Liz Savile Roberts said was absolutely true, wasn't it?
Yeah.
We've literally just seen it's absolutely true.
Totally.
You know, as I said, he acts with absolute outrage. But what she said was right. Because a few weeks later, he turned around and said, yeah, she's absolutely right. I didn't believe a word of it.
Yeah. It's incredible. It really is quite incredible. Again, we could do this all day, but we can't really, because unlike Keir Starmer, we actually have, you know, some rules that we have to follow. And regulations, everything. Let me ask you about Norman Tebbit, finally. I mean, Kemi Badenoch's come out and said he was an icon of British politics. Nothing yet from Keir Starmer. I don't know whether he's going to say anything about Norman Tebbit's death at 94. Did you have many dealings with him?
No, I never met him, but obviously he was one of the sort of dominant figures in British politics when I was growing up. I mean, to be perfectly honest, his politics certainly weren't my politics. But I mean, when I heard the news of his death, I mean, the thing I did think, and maybe this is just a product of sort of just getting a bit old, a bit long in the tooth, but I think it did kind of bring home that I do think there is a big disconnect now between the stature of politicians we had, you know, even 20, 30 years ago, and the stature of the politicians we've got now. I mean, he was, whether you liked him or loathed him, he was just such a huge figure in British politics and such a huge influence over the nation. Yeah, and such a massive influence over Margaret Thatcher as well. And I can't help thinking back as well to that dreadful day when they bombed the Brighton Hotel. And that picture, which I think we will find eventually, of him in the rubble, with his wife injured, you know, paralysed from that terrible attack. Yeah, I mean, obviously we've been talking quite a bit the last few days about the pressures that modern politicians face. Yeah. Well, you know, politicians back then had quite a few pressures they had to face as well. Yeah, they did, absolutely. Dan, good to see you. Thank you very much indeed. Dan Hodges, commentator of the Mail on Sunday there, with his views on Norman Tebbit. We'll be talking coming up next to a brand new Reform councillor in Essex, and of course Norman Tebbit was Chingford. I think he was known as the Chingford skinhead at one point. He was very much an Essex man, and very much a man that didn't take any nonsense from anybody. We'll talk to Jamie McIver coming next. Rupert Bell's here as well, with the latest on Prince Andrew, who's apparently wheels up now. He can start travelling again because he's been cleared by the FBI. Let's talk.
actually, we need to remember that 50 people were killed and tens of people in a series of incidents again and again and again since have been killed by Islamic terrorists in this country. It is a serious problem. It is
the single biggest threat to
It
our
has not
country.
got better. In fact, it's got worse. And the authorities, the media, far too many people outside of this channel are determined to shut down any conversation of it. And it's an outrage to those 50 people who we remember were brutally murdered 20 years ago.
Absolutely.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back to Morning Glory. It's 9:33. I'm Mike Graham with you all the way through until 10 o'clock, which is about half an hour from now. This from Clay in Folkestone. He says, Mike, this emergency alert. I know quite a few people without a mobile phone. What about them? Yeah, well, they'll just have to grin and bear it, won't they? Just have to look up at the skies. Let's get a voice note from Steve.
Hello. Hello. What's your name? Emmanuel Macron. Do you want some migrants? No, we already have some. I told them we already have some. What is your name? My name is Sir Kate. Oh, sir, hey, can you get off the round table? Do you want some migrants? Oh, yes, I love migrants. How much? Let's say £500 million. Oh, that's an absolute bargain. Oh, I'm good at negotiating, mate. One of the best. Okay, I'll send them right over, sucker.
Thank you, Steve. There's a sort of little version of hello, hello for you there. Goodness me. We've got a very talented audience. Jamie McIver's here. Very good morning to you, Jamie. Good
morning.
Thank you for coming in. The first time Reform UK's first Essex councillor.
That's correct.
Welcome to Morning Glory. People are looking at this Starmer-Macron kind of, mash-up, this summit, and going, why? What are they going to do? What are they possibly going to agree that's going to help us?
Well, I know. I mean, first of all, if I had the opportunity of meeting Emmanuel Macron this morning, I would say, le problème dans ma ville, c'est il y a trop de migrants illégaux. There are too many illegal migrants in my town, because at the end of the day, this country's biggest political issue right now is the fact we have uncontrolled borders. I mean, I can't believe I'm saying, I always am in disbelief when I say these things, because we are an island. I don't know how hard it has to be. But frankly, Kent, the Garden of England, has become the front garden to people that want to enter the country illegally. And, there can't be a bigger priority for the British state other than national security, which right now is very vulnerable.
And they keep telling us that we're on a war footing. I mean, we've just been having a bit of a poking fun at this alert system that they've got going on. They're going to send out an alert on September the 7th, as if in case we get invaded. But somebody said, well, maybe we'd be better off if we were invaded, because actually they might run the country better, and we might actually have some kind of security, which we don't have. We don't know who these people are.
Well, I think the point that people are making quite a lot at the moment is that, we are, I think we're the best country in the world, of course I do, and I look at the moment at Britain on the world stage and I feel a bit embarrassed, and I don't like feeling like that. And whilst I'm in no way a supporter of Keir Starmer, I want the British Prime Minister on the world stage to make me feel proud to be British. And actually at the moment we look at our government and it is chaos. It's also humiliating. I look at the Chagos deal, I look at the situation of our borders, I look at the weakness that Britain shows. I think particularly some of our stances on the Middle East has been weak, and I don't like the way that London streets have
Well, it's not just been weak in the Middle East, it's been wrong, in my view.
I make you right there. And also I think if you just look at the streets of London, you only speak to a black cab driver and they say it's a nightmare at the weekend. You can't get tourists around because of all the protesting, and I just think we've got a very horrible culture right now in our country. It upsets me, but I do see a light at the end of the tunnel. I think Reform's polling is exceptional. I think the reality of Nigel Farage being Prime Minister is now a realistic reality, and that's something we're all excited about. Business is excited about that. Ordinary, hard-working people that set their alarm clock in the morning can see a light at the end of the tunnel now. The patriotic Brits can see a light at the end of the tunnel.
But there's an awful lot of them that I hear from every single day who get in touch with us, between sort of 5 and 7 in the morning, who say, I got up for work, I do it every day. I'm getting more and more cheesed off with the fact that there are too many people in this country getting something for nothing. I'm working my backside off. My wife has got 2 jobs. We're trying our best. We're trying to raise kids. We're not on benefits, but They see people on benefits, they see people coming in as migrants getting free stuff, and they're really getting angry about it.
Well, of course they have every right to be angry.
Yeah.
I mean, they have every right to be angry. And what angers people even more is the fact that people are entering the country illegally, and the British state is treating them as though they are British citizens on day one and putting them in a hotel room. Meanwhile, we have homeless veterans on the streets of this country. So people have every right to be angry. What people need to do, and I say this all the time, whether I'm on a pub tour, campaigning, whatever, is that anger needs to now be channeled into political participation, voting at a bare minimum, joining a political party like Reform, which is actually standing up for this stuff, but also actually getting involved in your community, meeting your local councillors. There are now 850 Reform councillors across the country and counting. You know, people have now got to turn this frustration into political participation, or nothing will change. It's all very well moaning about it, being unhappy about it. We need to turn that corner now. The only way we left the European Union is because enough people up and down this country said that's it and started putting vote leave posters in their windows and delivering leaflets. The only way, this is a war footing politically now, to remove these socialists out of government, these people that hate Britain, that are harming our country. We've got to replace it with a common sense Reform government. I do genuinely believe that is the only way we're going to turn a corner.
Yeah, I think so. And how are you finding going into this local council in Essex and for the first time having to try and deal with the people there and coming presumably up against quite a lot of what you might call recidivism, people who don't really want to help you?
Yeah, I would say I'm probably the least popular councillor in that council chamber. But do you know what? I love it.
You look like you're enjoying it, though.
Do you know what? I defected to Reform UK, so I'm not a by-election winner, but I defected to Reform, one of the first to do it. I'm very proud to do so. And I go to that council chamber, and they all give it to me. It's funny, isn't it, how one backbench councillor can be the subject of almost a council meeting. People get up and they give their entire 3 minutes that's meant to be for their constituents. They do a monologue about me. It's absolutely hilarious. But I look around that chamber and I think all of you are going to lose your seats the minute we have elections. And look at what happened in Kent. Look at what happened in Lancashire. Some of these seats that have been Conservative forever, rural communities that have always voted Conservative, farming communities, and they all voted Reform, because there is a tsunami of turquoise. We only need to look at the polling. And so I look at all those people and I think, I can't wait for you all to lose your seats. Firstly, because of the fact you clearly don't put your constituents before your politics, but also because they have actually fundamentally let the country down, let their councils down. You look at the debt situation in some of these councils. I think Kent is on £84,000 a day in interest alone, and we've now got a Reform administration.
It's unaffordable, isn't it? They can't.
It's unsustainable. And you look at what we've inherited in places like Worcestershire. We've got these big empty buildings that are costing a fortune. You know, no one believes that we can do miracles overnight. And the people that voted Reform know that too. But what the people voted for, they voted for a change, and it's a culture change from the top down. You look at some of the things that our chief executives, some of our councils have been doing to resist some of the Reform activity. You know, that's going to hopefully stop very soon. And I think we've got a real opportunity now, actually a once-in-a-generation opportunity to take local government seriously. We've just expected our bins to be collected and
it's all gone horribly wrong, and everyone's going, why doesn't any of it work? Why are the roads not being fixed? Why are the gardens not being cut? Why are the parks not being looked after? I mean, we've got, even in London today, there's a report, we haven't even got around to talking about it, that some of the most dangerous places in London now are the royal parks, because they're teeming with criminals, and people go in there thinking, oh, I'll take the kids in there, it'll be nice. They're getting their watches nicked, they're getting their phones nicked, getting their bicycles stolen. You know, what are the police doing? And what are the local government in this city, i.e. Sadiq Khan? What's he doing?
Well, Sadiq Khan, I'm sorry, I don't know how that guy's ever won an election based on his record, but let's just be frank about it. It's civic pride, isn't it? People have to love their communities, and how can you love some of the communities in London when you've got graffiti everywhere, when you've got drug dealing in every corner, when you've got people riding on their bikes, snatching people's phones, and then you phone police and nothing happens? I mean, it's a scary situation we find ourselves in, and this is the capital of England. And how many England flags do you see flying around the city? You know, the lack of civic pride in London is astonishing. But actually, what should make us feel better is on the borders of London, especially that sort of M25 area of London, there is still that patriotic folk, and I do think when they have their opportunity to vote next year, assuming that Labour don't decide to cancel a load of more elections, assuming those people get to vote, I think they will vote for change, because a lot of people now are fleeing London. We talk a lot about immigration to the country. Not many people talk about migration out of London. You know, how many people talk about the fact that the East End of London, which was once full of English people, those people are now living in places like Essex and Hertfordshire, and it's not because they've chosen They've felt forced out of these places. Nobody wants to talk about that. Ongar, where I'm a councillor, a beautiful part of Essex, most of the people that live there now, they're either born and bred or they've come from East London. And when I talk about East London, I'm talking about bits that actually are historically part of Essex. And we've seen the counties be carved up. Many people that are Essex people are now in London under Mayor Khan's jurisdiction. They never had a say on that. And now with local government reorganisation, we're seeing Essex carved up potentially into 3 or 4 or 5. No one can make their mind up. So I think we've got a very worrying lack of civic pride that's occurring, but I do believe the silent majority are proud of their country, they love their country, and they want their country back.
Yeah, they certainly do. Good to see you, Jamie McIver. Thank you very much indeed. We'll see you again soon, I hope. We've got lots to talk about. First, Essex councillor from Reform. Coming up next, we're going to have Rupert Bell, because he's got something to tell us about Prince Andrew, who's apparently in the clear now. Isn't that lovely? It's 9:43.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back to Morning Glory, 9:44. I'm Mike Graham. Very nearly at the end of the show. We're here for another 10-15 minutes. Great show as always, says Reg. With Prince Andrew being cleared by the FBI, does that mean he will now become a working royal again and earning his keep? Well, we'll find out, because we've got the man to ask, Mr. Rupert Bell. And also Paul says this. Dan is right in what he says. Is it not childish of two-tier to blame backbenchers of impending tax hikes when everyone has known for months that Rachel was going to have to do this because of the mess she has made? Absolutely right. Rupert Bell is here, Talks Royal Correspondent. Front page of The Sun today. It says Air Miles Andy cleared for takeoff. So, will we be seeing him back working again? Rupert, very good morning to you.
I don't think we'll see him back working. Good morning, Mike. I don't think that's going to be on the agenda for some time, because while he's never been found guilty, it's obviously by association with Jeffrey Epstein, and obviously that infamous interview sort of left him out in the cold by his own actions. So I'm not sure there is any rush to get him back into the public fold. Obviously, the FBI investigation into whatever links with Jeffrey Epstein and seems to have been put on hold on a wider scale, not just around Prince Andrew. So I'm sure lots of other people might be breathing a bit of a huge sigh of relief. Somehow it has now been brushed back under the cover. But for Prince Andrew, he still is, I think, in the eyes of the British public, persona non grata. So, yes, it might mean he'll be able to travel and go abroad again. I think he's had one trip in recent times where he flew on a private jet to Bahrain, I'm led to believe. So it might mean that he can get out of and not be stuck in the royal lodge. Right. But I do think there is a sense of exasperation within the royal family with him as a whole, because he doesn't, he's very much sees things his own way. There's no sense of mea culpa necessarily from him. He is convinced by his his rightness at times.
Yes, well, I was going to say, you know, knowing him as you do, and we all kind of have a view of him, and you know, he's not, shall we say, imbued with a great deal of humility, is he? By the sounds of him, and I imagine he would quite like to make this a point of principle to say, look at me, I never did anything wrong in the first place, so now I'm going to start pushing my way out into more sort of sociable events and possibly being more visible. Maybe not quite getting air miles around the world and playing golf tournaments in Dubai, but I would expect him to try and prove a point, wouldn't you?
What I probably want to do is try and generate some money and an income. Because of with his business links, but those business links have often caused him to get himself into a bit of a pickle, and that's where he's got to be very careful. And you know, there are talks of he's been involved of consultancy. He presumably has a very extensive contacts book, so people might think that that's bringing people together, and that's a way that he could earn money. But in terms of being a working member of the royal family and being back out on the road and supporting his brother, that's not going to happen. We'll probably see him at the sort of major sort of semi-private public events like Christmas and maybe one or two other occasions. That might be easier for him to be seen in public, but actually in a working capacity, that at the moment that is just not on the agenda. The king is not ready, I don't think, to offer him an olive branch and say, we need you back out on the road. Because actually, more importantly, he may say that, but does the public want him to be representing the royal family? And that's the balancing act here, right. Because if he's going out and about doing things, but actually he's not going to actually be that welcome by whatever organisation it is, what's the point of putting him back out on the road again?
Well, that's right. And I guess it also depends as well on what the King's view of him is, and perhaps even William.
I think there's a sense of frustration with him, that he doesn't ever seem to read the room. I think that's part of the problem. There are two members of the royal family who are in that situation, and it may be that because their arrogance has got them into this situation. Yeah. So for Air Miles Andy, it might be, you know, he might get to bronze level rather than a gold card. So
well, we shall see. Let's talk about Wimbledon. Because you might remember the conversation we had last week about progress, right? And how great it was going to be that the line judges had been done away with, right? I was there actually on Saturday. I had a lovely day. It was fantastic. I still can't quite explain why the disembodied voice comes out and says fault. And it was clearly a male voice when I was at centre court, and the umpire was female, so it was obviously some kind of AI projected voice. But let's have a look at the moment when somebody apparently switched off the automatic line call system.
Stop.
Yeah, Pavlyuchenkova was waiting for a call here. I think. Yeah, she's saying that it missed by a way.
Ladies and gentlemen, we're gonna just quickly check if the system was up and running, because there was no audio call for this ball on the list.
So we did hear the system say stop. So we need confirmation here.
Well, this is a first, isn't it, with the electronic line calling?
Yeah. Mayday, Mayday. The system's not working. There's your progress. There's your progress for you.
Oh, this was this was manna from heaven for you, Mike.
Absolutely.
It? Like, you're in a happy moment here. The AI goes absolutely belly up. But as a result of human error, there are a lot of. It's obviously a new system. Now you hear both voices, depending on where the line call is. You occasionally hear a women's voice or everything, but that's just to actually give spectators and TV viewers a sense when you hear out, even though it may be a disembodied voice. So that is all fine, but when the machine wasn't switched on in a certain part of the court. But actually where you find it, so the protocol and where we're going with AI, yes, there will always be an element, and some players even think, you know, with AI, it's not 100% accurate.
Well, that's the problem. And you know what I thought, actually, as well, just as a general principle that I thought was missing, apart from the fact that it looks a bit barren without the line judges, you know, you miss the drama of the challenge to the call. you know, because the thing that people quite liked was the call would be challenged, the line judge would make the call, the umpire would go to Hawkeye, and then they'd throw it up on the screen, and there would be a bit of a slow clapping thing going on, and it was quite a drama. You know, that's all gone now.
Yes, and look, having seen it and feeling it, it does give a more soulless feel, and you don't get now players they're trying to take out the sort of drama and say, right, you've signed up, players have signed up for this, you have to accept what is going on here. Right. Technology. What should have happened, and what we don't understand, is that ball was so far out in that match.
It was about a foot out, wasn't it?
And why doesn't the umpire just, the umpire then is just sitting there as reading a computer screen. He's not actually doing his job. Does he not have the position to actually say, if he thinks something's out, in that case, it was so far out.
Right.
Why can't he just say it's out?
Just call it out. Because would it not have? It changed the course of the game as well, didn't it?
Yes, but it didn't change the end of the match.
It didn't. No, but it could have done though.
It absolutely could have done. But fortunately for Sonic Hotel, she was outplayed that day.
Right.
And Pavlyuchenkova, obviously played some brilliant tennis, but. It's a system, and obviously fallout since of it is now we know that the operators of it, it clearly someone didn't switch something.
Someone switched it off, apparently, right?
Yeah, well, or didn't turn it on. Whatever, brushed accidents. It's like all these things. We complain about VAR in football, and this is still a work in progress. I am sure Wimbledon will be reviewing how it's gone. What do they need to improve certain procedures? Is it as accurate as we want it to be? They do put up close call on the screens and show people what's going on the main courts. If there is a line, a ball is close to the line, in or out. But I still think it does. It definitely is a more soulless vibe around the main courts, that you haven't got that human interaction. But unfortunately, Mike, it's progress, and it's what the players want. And it happens at every tournament, except Roland Garros doesn't have it. For some reason. They said, no, we'll stick to what we have, because supposedly on clay it's easier to see if a ball is in and out. But elsewhere it is now standard practice for tournaments to have it all done by this artificial intelligence situation. But
well, thankfully,
I'm sure on Saturday you were sitting there, hey, it's messed up. I bet you were. It was like manna from heaven.
It was. I did say to Christian, we've got to get Rupert Bell on. We've got to talk about this. Yeah, which we've now done. I also want to be clear that many traditions are still good, though. Yeah, there was quite a lot of Pimm's and champagne drunk on Saturday, and I was told I had a very loud voice by the men who were in charge of security, and I was asked to keep quiet at one point.
Well, there's a surprise.
I know.
Well, luckily you weren't extracted from the grounds.
No, thankfully, no. No, thankfully not. But anyway, listen, Rupert, thank you very much indeed. Let's not try any more progression for a while, because until we get it right, I think that's probably a bad idea. This is Morning Glory, of course. Back after this.
actually, we need to remember that 50 people were killed and tens of people in a series of incidents again and again and again since have been killed by Islamic terrorists in this country. It is a serious problem. It is
the single biggest threat to
It
our
has not
country.
got better. In fact, it's got worse. And the authorities, the media, far too many people outside of this channel are determined to shut down any conversation of it. And it's an outrage to those 50 people who we remember were brutally murdered 20 years ago.
Absolutely.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Good morning, Glory. It's 9:58. It's almost time for Julie Hartley-Brewer. This is one from Elliot. I'll just read it. Just as well the emergency alert doesn't go off every time Keir Starmer tells a lie. Yeah, that would be just on constant, wouldn't it? Anyway, I don't know why they're even telling us about this emergency alarm. For what?
I know it is in September as well.
Yeah.
I was thinking, God, if it goes off when I'm on air, I've got my phone on silent.
Well,
it still
since you
goes
remember
off.
last time this happened,
I don't think it worked on my phone.
I think we all, half of it didn't work, but I think we all deactivated it or something.
Good to test it. I mean, it's just to tell us there's another pandemic. We need to get locked in our homes again.
Yeah.
Thing is,
leave your home.
The thing is, I just wouldn't trust the government on any
No,
warnings
you wouldn't.
now.
Why would you?
They've ruined that. They've ruined that.
Completely.
Maybe they're warning us that Emmanuel Macron's arriving.
Yeah, well, that's always a good thing to be warned about.
I know. Oh, there are no boundaries. There are no borders between us. I mean, there are.
Yeah.
I mean, there are. That's what the King's
The King's
saying.
not been playing a great game lately.
Why are we rewarding Macron with a state visit?
I know.
He's tried to punish British people
I know.
for voting